Chapter 26, Shattered Sun Blade. The passage was very quiet and dim, with only two human-shaped light sources illuminating the passage, allowing people to barely see what was going on inside. Senju Kagawa's body was covered in flames, and he sat cross-legged, using breathing techniques to stop the bleeding from his wounds. After practicing the breathing method, Senju Jingchuan gradually discovered that in fact all parts of the body would be affected by breathing. At the same time, as long as he could use the breathing well, he would be able to finally control the muscles and blood vessels of the body. Although Senju Jingchuan is only a beginner in breathing techniques now, because he has a high talent for learning breathing techniques, he has now mastered the use of breathing techniques to control muscles and blood vessels, thereby controlling the amount of bleeding. Without the confrontation between the two, the passage returned to silence, so quiet that even the sound of breathing could be heard clearly. When Senju Jingchuan does not actively attack, the Senju Jingchuan on the opposite side just stands there but does not actively attack either. There was a slight chill on the ground, which penetrated into Senju Jingchuan's skin through his pants, temporarily calming his nervous and anxious mood. Senju Jingchuan's breathing gradually became steady and heavy. The flames covering his body burned much more vigorously to help him illuminate more areas of the passage so that he could observe the details in the passage more clearly. Qianshao Jingchuan still didn't dare to act rashly. He just sat there, looking up and observing the passage, from top to bottom, from left to right. Most of the stone walls in the passage were shattered into pieces due to the fierce battle between the two men, and piled up in various corners of the ground. Only the stone walls leading into the passage and the door leading out of the passage remained intact, and their hard appearance seemed impossible to be destroyed by any force. The fact seems to be true, the stone wall leading into the passage was still intact even after being hit several times during the battle. And the door leading out of the passage was not affected by the war between the Thousand Hands Mirror River and the Thousand Hands Mirror River, so how could it be damaged? Naturally, Senju Jingchuan didn't find anything unique at all, except for the two doors. Senju Jingchuan fell into deep thought. Since it is the place that supplies energy to the Thousand Hands Mirror River, as long as the energy source is attacked or destroyed, Thousand Hands Mirror River will definitely have a big reaction. So far, the only place in this passage that can cause the Thousand Hands Mirror River to have a great reaction is the door to go out. Senju Jingchuan narrowed his eyes, thoughts racing through his mind. He couldn't help rubbing his fingers together. This was a subconscious action as he was thinking and nervous. Although he was not sure whether the door was the energy source, and whether the energy source must be in the outside world rather than on Senju Jingchuan still wanted to give it a try. But if he fails this time, his Nichiren sword may not be able to hold on any longer. What should I do? Should I take a gamble? Qianshao Jingchuan couldn't help but get anxious. Jingchuan was an impatient person, and being trapped in the darkness for a long time really wore out his patience. In the distance, the ugly monster suddenly moved, then its fleshy wings shook and its body turned over. The ugly monster slowly crawled to the side of Senju Jingchuan, wrapped its tail around Senju Jingchuan's wrist, and sucked away the flame on Senju Jingchuan's wrist to replenish energy. Master, that you has a very strong smell of time and space, which was covered by the stench before and I didn't notice it. Just now, he was injured when fighting with you, and the smell of time and space leaked out, so I smelled it. The ugly monster whispered to Qianshao Jingchuan in his heart. The taste of time and space? Ugly, can you detect where his energy comes from? When Qianshao Jingchuan heard what Ugly said, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope in his heart. Source? I don't know. But it's definitely not controlled by him. The power of time and space cannot be controlled by a puppet without consciousness. The ugly monster said affirmatively. Senshao Jingchuan couldn't help feeling a little disappointed when he heard that the ugly monster couldn't tell the source of the power, but since he knew that the energy source was external, the probability that the door was the energy source increased again. Should we give it a try or hold off for now? The next second, a sharp wind blew past, and it was Senju Kagawa who attacked again with the sun blade in his hand, bringing up a gust of wind. This time, Qianshao Jingchuan was so fast that only a shadow could be seen. He rushed straight up with unstoppable force. But this time his target was not Qianshao Jingchuan, but the door behind Qianshao Jingchuan. In life, you just need to step on the accelerator more often. Senju Kagawa thought. When Senju Kagawa saw Senju Kagawa attacking, he immediately picked up the Nichiren sword and used the same moves. Senju Kagawa held the sun blade tightly in both hands. Breathing of the sun one form round dance. The flames burning on the sun blade illuminated the delicate and lovely face of Senju Kagawa, and his young face showed determination. The warm and bright red flames flashed in Senju Kagawa's black eyes, making his eyes brighter. However, this time, Senju Kagawa deliberately moved the sun sword away by an inch. At the moment when Senju Kagawa approached him, he relied on his super body control ability to loosen his left hand that was holding the sun sword, dodged the attack of Senju Kagawa by turning his body sideways, and attacked the door. With a crack, the crack on the sun blade became bigger, and the pitch-black blade was covered with silver-white cracks, and it was about to fall apart. But Senju Jingchuan saw that a crack also appeared on the door. The movement of Senju Kagamakuwa paused imperceptibly for a moment, and then it angrily swung the sun blade towards Senju Kagamakuwa. Senshao Jingchuan took a deep breath, gathered his strength, and dodged to the side the moment Senshao Jingchuan attacked. Due to inertia, the Thousand Hands Mirror River chopped straight at the door. The huge force exploded in the collision between the metal and the stone wall, forming a powerful shock wave. Senju Jingchuan collapsed in this force, and Senju Jingchuan was also blown away due to the impact of the shock wave. The stone wall finally broke. Senju Jingchuan fell outside the door, and the sun blade in his hand completely shattered the moment it touched the ground, turning into starlight and dissipating in the air. In a trance, Senju Jingchuan felt someone holding him up, and he felt so warm, so stable, and so safe. That person wiped the blood from the corner of Senju Kagawa's lips, and his gentle appearance was just like Senju Haruko. "Mom!" Senju Jingchuan recited silently, and then fell into a deep faint. Ding! Host completes the mission. The scattered energy fragments from the other world have been recovered. Distributing rewards. Chapter 27. The Truth of the Matter. In the distance, the sky suddenly became bright, and the sunlight shone on this quiet little town, revealing a faint golden glow. This remote little town in the land of thunder has finally returned to peace and tranquility. The streets in the town were bustling with people. The faces of the pedestrians were a little pale, but they could not hide their smiles. They became full of energy again and began to fight for a new day. They have forgotten the memories of becoming evil ghosts, as if they had had a strange dream, and after waking up they continue their daily lives. In their memories, those dead evil ghosts became people who died unexpectedly due to serious illnesses. Although it was sad, it did not bring any other impact on their normal and ordinary lives. After Senju Kagamakuwa's system completely recovered the virus, those innocent ordinary people infected with the evil ghost virus turned back into normal people. Of course, this only applies to innocent people who have nothing to do with the virus and have not harmed others. Those evil ghosts who retained consciousness while becoming evil ghosts and still maliciously hurt others in order to improve their strength disappeared into the air the moment the virus was recovered. Although those evil ghosts who hurt people unconsciously have recovered and become ordinary people, they still have to atone for their sins in the underworld after death. The sun shines on the trees, through the treetops, and casts dots of light on the ground. Birds chirp and flutter their wings between the trees, and butterflies flutter among the flowers, their graceful figures drawing one graceful curve after another in the air. This is a scene full of spring and vitality. Senju Jingchuan sat comfortably and leisurely under a big tree at the entrance of the town. The light spots formed by the sun shining through the treetops fell on his fair cheeks, and the breeze gently kissed the ends of his hair. Senju Kagawa was waiting for Senju Chinj, who went to buy some dry food to prepare for the return trip. Originally, Senju Kagawa wanted to go with Senju Chinj, but Senju Chinj said that Senju Kagawa was too seriously injured yesterday and should have a good rest, and rejected Senju Kagawa's request. Yesterday, Senju Kagamakuwa was knocked unconscious by the shock wave and was picked up by Madara and taken away from the danger zone. How powerful is the shock wave? In fact, the shock wave blew through the three isolated passages where the three people were at once. The moment the tunnel was blown open, Qian Shaochinj was trapped in a sand pit, and the sand was about to bury his mouth and nose. At this time, Qian Shaochinj's limbs were tightly surrounded by sand, and the wounds on his body that were cut by hidden weapons were bleeding. The rough sand rubbed his bloody wounds, causing pain and itching, and the numbness spread from his fingertips to his whole body. Senju Chinj had been prepared to accept death, but he did not expect the wall to be blown apart all of a sudden, and the sand was all scattered, so Senju Chinj survived. As for the powerful shock wave, Senju was not seriously injured because he was protected by the sand. Although Madara was not in any danger at the time, he had no way out. The wall was blown up just in time to help him out. The only injury Madara suffered was that he was startled by the sudden explosion of the wall, which almost scared his rabbit eyes out. After Ban went out of the broken door, he found a child lying on the ground. He was facing the ground, as if he had been soaked in blood. His whole body was stained red with blood, and he had wounds from the explosion. His short white hair was disheveled, his face was covered in blood, and blood was still flowing from his mouth. When I got closer, I saw that the person who was blown into a rag doll was actually Senju Kagawa. Madara hurriedly pulled Senju Kagawa out of the ruins, and at this time Senju Kagawa actually called Madara Mom. Although Senju Kagawa did not make any sound at that time, Madara's eyesight and vision were much better than others. In addition, Madara was observing Senju Kagawa's situation at that time. When he saw Senju Kagawa's mouth moving, he thought he was going to explain something, but he didn't expect that he was calling Mom. So, Madara endured the chill and helped Senju Kagawa to stop the bleeding from his wound, and then met up with Senju Nariwa, who escaped from the passage. Due to the huge impact of the explosion, many walls in the tunnel were broken. The entire tunnel was already in a shaky state, and many rocks fell from above. Madara held Senju Kagamawa and ran quickly upwards with Senju Nariwa. Why was he holding him? Because the stones were falling too fast and too much, and Madara was really afraid that Senju Kagamawa would be hit by the stones and die. As for why it was the 12-year-old Madara who held the Senju Kagamawa instead of the 17-year-old Senju Nariwa, it was naturally because Senju Nariwa was also seriously injured. Although he did not lose his ability to move, the amount of blood loss was also terrifying. So Ban finally escaped with the burden and a wounded soldier in his arms. After coming out, Ban found that the monsters in the small town had turned back into humans again, and he was surprised. He also quickly deduced that it must be Senju Kagamawa who did something to save these people's lives. As for how Senju hugged Senju Jingchuan and prayed that he would stay alive after escaping, we will not go into details for now. In short, the three people who solved this strange thing were still very happy. After waking up in the Senju Kagami River, Madara told the information he had obtained from the mural in that passage. It turned out that the virus came from the noble lady's father. The old man's wife died of complications during childbirth, and the old man found it hard to accept this fact. By chance, he got the evil ghost virus from a cult. The cult members told him that they needed a 5-year-old boy and 1,000 people as sacrifices, and the boy must have the blood of his deceased wife. The noble lady was brainwashed by the old man since she was young, and she wanted to revive her mother. So she gave birth to a boy with great effort, fed him the monster virus every day, and raised him to be a qualified sacrifice, and waited until he was 5 years old to become a real sacrifice. The boy, Zioxy, gradually became slow-witted and stupid due to years of exposure to the monster virus. After hearing this story, Senju Jingchuan felt extremely sad. A good child became a sacrifice and was bled to death. Zioxy, Zioxy, his name clearly contains the word hope, so why is his life full of despair and there is no hope at all? Senju Jingchuan thought of how Zioxy had stopped the noble lady from handing him pastries in the carriage before. He was obviously a kind-hearted child. Because of the system, Senju Jingchuan knows even more. He knew that those cults were actually deceived by the evil ghost king of another world. Because the ghost king was killed and only a piece of flesh was left, he needed a suitable sacrifice as an anchor point to cross the world. The need for another 1,000 people was pure nonsense. The ghost king just wanted more people to be infected with the evil ghost virus to complete his rule. If the demon king really came to the ninja world through Zioxy, this place might become another purgatory. Qian Shao Jingchuan couldn't help but feel scared when he thought of this, and could only be thankful that there was a system that prevented the ghost king from crossing the world. System, that child named Zioxy. Sen Shao Jingchuan couldn't help but ask. Good souls will eventually be rewarded. The system replied in a gentle tone. Chapter 28. Brother Tobirama, you deserve to be enshrined in the Imperial Temple. Now that this strange matter has been resolved, Senju Kagamawa and Senju should return. Madara was obviously also in a hurry to return, and he said goodbye to the two shortly after coming out of the tunnel. Senju Kagawa and Senju Nariwa did not stop him, and the three of them said goodbye in a friendly manner. Before Madara left, Senju Kagawa reluctantly hugged him and touched his slender, bony hands, almost clinging to him. Madara took away Senju Kagamakuwa's hand that was stuck on him with amusement, looked at him with a teasing look, and said with a smile, "My dear son, don't miss me too much." When Senju Jingchuan heard this, he immediately became annoyed. After waking up, Senju Kagamakuwa recalled that he felt very embarrassed for calling Madara mom in a trance. This made him a generation lower than his good brother for no reason. He had tried his best to forget about it, but when Ban brought it up again, he suddenly wanted to crawl into the ground. Shameful, so shameful. If it wasn't for the sake of sticking points, would I have done this? Qian Shao Jingchuan thought aggrievedly. Senju Kagamakuwa and Madara were playing charades here, but Senju Chinj on the side didn't know what they were talking about. He was scratching his head and wondering if he had forgotten something. After Madara left, Senju Chinj still didn't realize what he had forgotten. So he hurriedly said to Senju Kagawa, "Jingchuan, come and check me out to see if I have lost my memory because of the serious injury." Senju Jingchuan squeezed Senju Chinj's hand solemnly, rubbed his head a few times, and then said in a pretentious manner, "After diagnosis by a professional medical ninja, Brother Chinj, your brain is damaged due to prolonged lack of oxygen to the brain." Senju Kagawa's expression was very serious, and his fair little face was full of sincerity. Senju Chinj originally thought that he really had some kind of brain injury, and asked Senju Jingchuan with fear and worry how to treat it. But Senju Jingchuan couldn't help himself and soon burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, Brother Chinj, are you serious? Nothing happened to you, you are so easy to fool, ha 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 ha." Senju Jingchuan laughed so hard that he was out of breath and almost fainted from laughing. Senju Chinj hadn't come to his senses yet, but when he saw Senju Jingchuan smiling, he knew that he was lying to him. The two began to chase and fight each other again. After laughing and cursing, the two went to look for the thousand-hand ninjas who had recovered. After waking up, several Senju ninjas felt weak and had splitting headaches, and could not remember anything. Senju Kagawa and Senju Chinj lied to them and said that they were accidentally drugged by the enemy and were almost killed. Fortunately, they found it in time. Although the Senju members were skeptical, they really didn't remember anything. In addition, Senju Kagawa and Senju Chinj looked very sincere, so they accepted the fact that several of their experienced ninjas were knocked unconscious and almost died on the spot. Regardless of how much doubt a few Senju ninjas were having in their lives, Senju Kagamakuwa and Senju Chinj breathed a sigh of relief. What happened in the past few days was so bizarre that even if the two of them told it, I'm afraid those thousand-hand ninjas wouldn't believe it. Now that they have regained their sanity, why not just let this matter become a thing of the past? Although Senju Jingchuan has healing skills, he almost lost all the blood in his body. Although the wound has healed, he still needs to rest well. Although Senju Chinj's injuries were not as serious as Senju Jingchuan's, he also needed to rest well. The Senju ninja who was traveling with them thought that the two men were fighting desperately with the enemy to save them, and they were extremely tolerant of them. Therefore, the group did not pursue speed on the return journey, and tried their best to accommodate the physical conditions of Senju Kagawa and Senju Chinj. On the way, Senju Chinj sighed many times that Senju Jingchuan might be the living bodhisattva who came to save him. In a short period of time, he actually pulled him back from the gates of hell twice. Although the two men were a little physically exhausted, they were ninjas after all. Their physical fitness was there, and the speed at which they traveled was unmatched by ordinary people. Except for the Senju Kagamakuwa who didn't know any ninjutsu and couldn't use ninja run, so he was carried on the back of a thousand-hands ninja. During the journey, the Senju ninja would occasionally check on Senju Kagawa's health. Senju Kagawa didn't have to run by himself, and could lie on the ninja's back to continuously gain points, so he was naturally happy and had no complaints. And just like that, your, very, kind, and my, happy, return journey finally ended. The group returned to the Senju clan's territory on a bright and sunny spring day. Senju Jingchuan, who had not been back for a long time, felt that the air in the Senju tribe was fresh and sweet. In the land of lightning, there were thunder and rain all year round, it was cloudy all year round, and there were only a few sunny days a year. Naturally, it was not as sunny, spring-like, and fresh in the land of fire. However, Senju Jingchuan, who had not returned for a long time, actually missed the days in the Senju clan. It must be because he had been here for so long that he began to feel homesick. The Senju Kagamigawa group took too long to get there, and the families of the Senju ninjas who were traveling with them had given up waiting for a long time. Even Senju Fusuma thought that they might have encountered enemies on the way and died. Unexpectedly, they returned on a sunny and warm afternoon. On the day he came back, several of Senshao Jingchuan's brothers happened to be in the clan territory. After hearing the news that Senju Kagamikawa and his group had returned, Hashirama and his companions rushed to the gate of the clan's territory. After seeing Senju Kagamikawa, the eldest brother Senju Hashirama hugged him and cried inconsolably with tears and snot. If you didn't know, you would think that Senju Kagamikawa had met with an accident. Although Kagamikawa Senju was very happy to be held by Hashirama Senju to gain sticky points, he was really overwhelmed by Hashirama's constant howling. He pulled for a long time, and finally with the help of Senju Tobirama, he pulled the sticky Senju Hashirama off his body. Senju Kagawa, feeling both amused and helpless, pulled Senju Hashirama's hand and showed him that there was not a single wound on his body. "Brother Hashirama, please stop crying. Look, I'm fine, aren't I?" Before they could comfort Senju Hashirama, Senju Kama and Itama came and hugged Senju Kagawa tightly, the younger brother they almost lost. Senju Kagamikawa was very touched that his brothers cared so much about his safety, but he felt like he was almost suffocated by being held in such a hurry. Okay, put Kagamikawa down quickly. He has been on the mission for so long and he should have a good rest now." Senju Tobirama finally rescued Senju Kagamikawa from the warm embrace of his brothers. Senju Kagawa was immediately grateful to Senju Tobirama. "Brother Tobirama, you deserve to be enshrined in the Imperial Ancestral Temple." Chapter 29. The Beginning of Change. After Senju Kagawa came back, the other Senju ninjas who were traveling with him all praised him highly, saying that although he was young, he was indeed very capable, especially his medical ninjutsu. As a result, Senju Kagawa's reputation in the Senju clan rose to a higher level. The treatment that Qianshao Jingchuan received in the Qianshao tribe has improved significantly compared to the beginning when he was hated by everyone. Now, when Qianshao Jingchuan walks on the street, he will meet kind old men and women who feed him candy. It was a sunny day and the spring scenery was just right. Having survived another winter, the Senju people are full of energy and are making preparations to lay the foundation for the new year and reap good harvests. Qianshao Jingchuan happily walked through the streets and alleys of the tribe's territory, taking a walk and basking in the sun, feeling very comfortable. The story of why Qianshao Jingchuan was so leisurely all started from the day he returned to the tribe. After returning to the clan, Qianshao Qinj went to Qianshao Fujian and boasted about the merits of Qianshao Jingchuan, attributing all the credit for defeating, winning, the enemy, evil, man, ghost, to Qianshao Jingchuan. Senju Qinj claimed that if Senju Kagamikawa had not reacted to the change in the situation in time and had not had excellent combat capabilities and superb medical ninjutsu, they would probably have all died there. Qianshao Fujian naturally understood that Qianshao Qinj's words were definitely exaggerated, but the gratitude of a small team to Qianshao Jingchuan was not something that could be pretended. In addition, Qianshao Jingchuan had just recovered from a serious injury and his face was visibly pale, so Qianshao Fujian let him rest for a few days and recuperate. As a result, Senju Jingchuan not only successfully completed the first mission of his life and gained the favor of the entire clan, but also got a few extra days of vacation. Senshao Jingchuan, who was given extra vacation, naturally wanted to enjoy it. That's why Senshao Jingchuan was wandering around the streets and alleys of the clan's land. However, Qianshao Jingchuan certainly didn't just wander around the clan territory. "Xiao Jingchuan, this is the soup we just stewed at home, come and have a bowl." A grandmother who was probably in her 50s or 60s waved to Senju Jingchuan and invited him to have the soup. "My grandmother's name is Nazi. She also fought in the battlefield when she was young. Although she is over 60 years old, she still looks very strong. Her eyes are still clear, with a hint of sharpness stained by blood. Her grandson was one of the ninjas in this mission." After hearing that Senju Kagamikawa had saved her grandson, Grandma Nako often gave Senju Kagamikawa some delicious food, sometimes it was her own cooking, and sometimes it was some snacks that children liked to eat. Senju Jingchuan also liked this kind old lady very much. He loved to come to her place when he had nothing to do and had become familiar with her. Therefore, Senju Jingchuan was not polite and ran over to drink the soup. "Grandma Nako, this soup is so delicious. Your cooking skills are still as good as ever. Kazuki is so lucky to have a grandma like you who makes delicious food for him every day." Senju Kagawa did not forget to praise Grandma Nako's cooking skills while drinking the soup. Kazuki is the name of Nako's grandson. Haha, little Kagamikawa is so sweet. If you like Grandma, come more often. Grandma Nako was coaxed by Senju Kagamikawa and she couldn't stop laughing. Since Senju Kazuki went on a mission, there was rarely anyone around for Nako's grandmother. Senju Kagawa was cute, delicate, and had a clever mouth, which often made Nako's grandmother happy all day. Over time, Grandma Nako, who was originally just grateful to Senju Kagamikawa for saving her grandson's life, has grown to really like this young child. After Senju Kagamikawa finished his soup, Grandma Nako took his hand and chatted with him for a while. Little Kagamikawa, how are you doing recently? Have you healed your injury? Grandma Nako's eyes swept from top to bottom, from left to right, carefully observing Senju Kagamikawa's physical condition, fearing that something might happen to him. The injuries are all healed, Grandma Nako, don't worry. My appetite has grown so big recently that I can eat a whole cow. Senju Kagawa said in an exaggerated tone, gesturing the size of a cow with his hand. Seeing that Senju Kagawa's face was still rosy, Grandma Nako breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing Kagawa's innocent and cute gestures, she couldn't help laughing out loud. Senju Kagamikawa chatted with Grandma Nako for a while here, making Grandma Nako laugh so hard that she couldn't stop smiling. She kept calling Senju Kagamikawa a little rascal. Senju Kagamikawa was also very happy because he could hear the system sound of Tai value +4 in his mind. After saying goodbye to Grandma Nako, Senju Kagamikawa came to the concentrated farmland of the Senju clan. In order to obtain supplies provided by the daimyo, all the ninjas of the Senju clan who were able to go on missions were busy taking missions every day, and most of the women who were unable to go on missions would stay at home and weave. Only some Senju members who were too old or disabled to go on missions but could still work would work in the fields. Therefore, until the Senju Kagami River discovered the concentrated area of farmland, the area was very desolate, with only a few fields planted with crops, and no members of the tribe came to cultivate the fields. When he first returned to his clan, Qian Shaojing bought potato seeds, sweet potato seeds, corn seeds, rice seeds, and instructions for planting these crops from the system space. And 2 days ago, Senju Kagamikawa had asked his brothers and Senju Chinj, Senju Aoyama, Senju Iki and other young and middle-aged laborers with whom he had a good relationship to help plant these seeds. The current concentrated area of arable land still looks desolate, with paddy fields and dry land occupying both sides. However, thanks to Qian Shao Jingchuan's efforts in the past few days, these arable lands seem to have been taken care of by someone, and are no longer overgrown with weeds like a few days ago. Corn, potatoes, and sweet potatoes are all high-yield crops. If they are grown well, harvested and stored well before winter comes, the quantity will be enough to support the people of the Senju tribe for a period of time. The winter for ninjas is too hard to endure, and Senju Kagamikawa never wants to experience the days of hunger and fullness again. When he was locked in the small room, Senju Jingchuan had no ability to intervene, but now that he is out, Senju Jingchuan has to be responsible for his own stomach. But when Senju Jingchuan asked people to cultivate the land, the brothers all looked very confused. Senju Kagamikawa didn't understand why the ninjas were unwilling to farm even though there was a shortage of food. Senju Kagamikawa explained to his brothers, if we have enough food, we won't have to suffer so much in winter. Even before winter, the tribesmen don't have to work so hard on their missions. Senju Jingchuan added. Then do we have to hand over part of these crops to the daimyo of the Land of Fire? Senju Kawarama scratched his head. He thought that the farmers of the Land of Fire had to pay grain to the daimyo as tax. Senju Kagawa was very confused after hearing this, and he replied. Of course not. Ninjas are not affiliated with the daimyo. We are free. At that time, after hearing what Kagakikawa said, Hashirama Senju happily touched Kagakikawa's head and praised him for his cleverness. Senju Tobirama also seemed to be thinking about something. On that day, Hashirama Senju was particularly active in helping to farm the Senju Kagami River. Chapter 30, God-like Man. Rewards are being distributed. When the electronic sound of the system sounded, Qian Shao Jingchuan was immersed in his sleep. Hearing the electronic sound in his mind that seemed a bit noisy in the quiet night, Qian Shao Jingchuan couldn't help but turn over, frowned, and waved his hand to drive away the sound. Unexpectedly, this wave of his hand directly slapped the sleeping Hashirama Senju in the face. There was a pop sound. Senju Hashirama was awakened directly by this crisp and loud slap. He opened his sleepy face blankly, and after a while he still didn't realize what happened. So he gently rubbed his stinging face, and then continued to hug Senju Jingchuan in his arms and fell asleep. Since coming back, Kagomikawa Senju has been pestering Hashirama Senju to sleep together every day, saying that he misses his big brother Hashirama Senju, but in fact he just wants to get his own points back as soon as possible. So, Hashirama Senju happened to become the direct victim of this slap. Senju Kagawa, who had just slapped Senju Hashirama unconsciously, fell into a deeper dream because of the system's reward. Senju Jingchuan had a strange dream this time. He dreamed of a man wearing a red haori. He had long dark red hair that was tied into a ponytail behind his back. His eyes were reddish-brown, his face was very handsome, and he wore earrings in the shape of a red sun on his ears. In addition to these, what impressed Senju Jingchuan most was a large birthmark on the man's face. The birthmark was red, and it stretched from the man's forehead to just below his left ear. The red flame tattoo was baring its fangs and claws, as if it could come alive at any time. He was holding a knife tightly in his right hand. It looked very much like the Nichiren sword that Senju Kagawa had bought before. The long blade was black and red. In front of the man with red marks on his face stood a black-haired young man. The young man was tall, with pale skin as white as paper and a pair of plum-red eyes. Although both of their eyes are reddish, Senju Jingchuan always felt that the black-haired young man's plum-red eyes gave him an ominous feeling. Those rose-red eyes were sticky, cold, and damp, as if they were the eyes of a cold-blooded animal that had never seen the sun for years. Senju Jingchuan only looked at it for a few seconds and couldn't help shuddering. Those eyes were so scary that Senju Jingchuan felt as if he was being stared at by a poisonous snake and was about to be bitten off by it. The two men seemed to be confronting each other. The next second, the man with red marks on his face suddenly raised the sun blade in his hand and slashed at the young man with plum-red eyes. Breathing of the sun 1 form round dance. Breathing of the sun form 2 Biridan. Breathing of the sun 3 types fiery sun red mirror. Breathing of the sun form 4 illusionary sun rainbow. Breathing of the sun 5 types train. Breathing of the sun 6th form burning bones and flaming sun. Breathing of the sun 7th form yang hua 2. Breathing of the sun 12 forms flame dance. Breathing of the sun 13 forms. The man with red spots on his face was like a god on earth. Every move he made was graceful, like a dancer dancing or a singer wailing. He performed the 13th form of sun breathing naturally and smoothly. The sun blade was as docile as a child in his hands. His every move seemed natural. The flames on the blade danced around the man. When the man was dancing with the sun blade, even the sun in the sky seemed to become his foil. He is the most dazzling rising sun in this world. Looking through the scorching sunlight, Senju Jingchuan was dazed. He held his breath, his pupils slightly dilated, his fingertips trembled, the blood in his body rushed, and a feeling of heat gradually rose in his heart. The man is strong, very strong. This was the only thought in Senju Jingchuan's mind. Senju Jingchuan, who was immersed in the man's dancing posture, was awakened by a scream from the young man with plum-red eyes. He looked closely and found that the young man with plum-red eyes was not human. Under the intensive attack of the man with stripes on his face, the young man with plum-red eyes actually divided himself into countless small pieces. The striped man was not in a hurry when he saw this, and he was still at ease. The knife in his hand pierced the pieces of meat quickly and accurately, leaving the evil ghost no chance to escape. Immediately afterwards, Senju Jingchuan felt a moment of trance before his eyes. He woke up. After waking up, Senju Jingchuan was still not satisfied. He was still recalling the 13 sword skills of breathing of the sun in his mind and was very excited. When he thought of the godlike man with red spots on his face, Senju Jingchuan felt his blood boiling. He is just too strong. He was so strong that when Senju Jingchuan stood in front of him, he had no intention of resisting, because he knew that the current Senju Jingchuan could not beat such a man. Senju Jingchuan couldn't help but imagine in his heart that if one day he could also learn the 13 sword techniques of the breathing of the sun, would he be as strong as that man? Senju Kagawa was in a daze when he was shaken awake by Senju Hashirama. Kagikawa, why are you in a daze? Senju Hashirama shook Kagikawa and put his face in front of Kagikawa. Senju Jingchuan came to his senses and was startled when he saw a huge watermelon-headed head in front of him. He reflexively swung his fist forward and hit forward. Boom! The force of Senju Kagawa's punch was quite strong, and it instantly made Senju Hashirama's face turn red, and 2 streams of bright red blood flowed from his nose. The handprints on Hashirama Senju's face were still red, and he was hit hard by Senju Kagawa again. Senju Hashirama covered his nose that was hit with a wronged look and cried, saying that he was going to be disfigured. Woo! How could Kagamakuwa be so cruel to attack so harshly all of a sudden? Senju Hashirama felt extremely wronged. He felt like his nose bone was about to break. Woo! I won't sleep with you, Jing Chuan, next time. Senju Kagawa reacted quickly and immediately covered Senju Hashirama's nose with his hand and performed a healing technique. In less than a second, Hashirama Senju's nosebleed stopped. Senju Kagamakuwa wiped the blood from Senju Hashirama's nose with a tissue, and apologized to Senju Hashirama by shouting, "Private Marseille! Brother Hashirama, why did you suddenly appear and scare me? I've been here the whole time. But you, Kagamakuwa, looked dazed right after you woke up. I got so close to you because I was worried about you, but who knew you would?" Senju Hashirama felt more and more aggrieved the more he thought about it. Senju Kagamakuwa comforted Senju Hashirama for a long time before he calmed down. Senju Hashirama stopped crying. He pointed at something on the table beside him and asked, "Kamigawa, what is this? Is it yours?" Senju Kagawa looked at the table in confusion. Sunblade. Chapter 31. Brotherhood. The object lying on the table was obviously the Sunblade that Senju Kagawa had been dreaming about. However, the blade of the Sunblade was silver white, and other than that, the shape of the Sunblade was exactly the same as the one used by the man with the stripes. As soon as Senju Kagawa saw the Sunblade, he thought of the godlike man with striped patterns in his dream. I didn't expect the system to directly reward me with a Sunblade. This is too generous. Senju Jingchuan thanked the system in his heart. He quickly got out of bed, grabbed the Sunblade, and wanted to lift it up to examine it carefully. Qian Shao Jingchuan exerted slight force. "Okay? Didn't move it?" Senju Jingchuan was a little embarrassed. This must be an illusion. Senju Kagawa thought. So he tried again to pick up the Sunblade. Great, failed again. Senju Hashirama was still looking at this new Sunblade with curiosity and asked, "Jingchuan, is this knife heavy? How about I try it?" Senju Kagawa didn't bother to pay attention to him. Now he just wanted to pick up the Sunblade. He politely declined Hashirama Senju's proposal. After all, this was his first real Nichiren sword, and he wanted to hold it himself. "I don't know why, but this Sunblade is extremely heavy, and Senju Jingchuan can't lift it with one hand." So, Senju Jingchuan started his third attempt. This time he held it with both hands. "Fortunately, I picked it up this time." Senju Kagawa held the Nichiren sword with trembling hands, and finally managed to pick it up. But soon he could no longer hold on, and the tip of the Nichiren sword fell to the ground with a bang. Senju Kagawa had to rely on the floor for support to hold the Nichiren sword. "Damn it, why is this Nichiren sword so heavy? The one I used before wasn't this heavy," Senju Kagamakuwa asked the system in his mind. "Host, please do not underestimate the system reward. What you exchanged before was a pirated Sunblade, but this Sunblade is the genuine Sunblade used by..." the system replied. "What? Who?" Senju Kagamakuwa asked in confusion, and the 4 words spoken by the system were automatically muted. However, he could roughly guess that those words should be the name of the man with red spots on his face in the dream. "I didn't expect that the Nichiren sword was really so heavy." Senju Kagamakuwa sighed in his heart. He is having trouble even picking up the Sunblade now, let alone using it. Senju Hashirama saw Kagamakuwa's lost expression and couldn't help but ask, "Jingchuan, is this knife yours? Why haven't I seen it before?" Senju Kagawa was still immersed in the feeling of loss. He just perfunctorily responded to Senju Hashirama. Yeah, it's mine." Senju Hashirama didn't quite understand why Kagamakuwa was disappointed, but he asked the right question. "Jingchuan, are you sad because you can't hold a knife?" After Senju Hashirama asked, an awkward atmosphere spread between the two. Senju Kagawa didn't want to pay attention to this elder brother who had touched his sore spot. "Who among my family members understands? Is it reasonable that you can't lift your own knife?" Don't worry about Kagamakiwa. When Kama was your age, he couldn't lift a sword either. Look, he's very good at wielding a sword now. If you practice, you can be as good as Kama. Thank you so much, big brother. Senju Kagamakiwa had a frown on his head, but after hearing what Senju Hashirama said, Kagamakiwa felt a lot better. Although most of the Senju clan members have extraordinary strength and excellent physical fitness, extraordinary strength also needs to be practiced slowly. When the Senju clan members were 5 or 6 years old, they could not lift objects that were nearly half of their own weight. How much more so is Senju Kagawa, a ninja who has not exercised for 4 years and has only recently rehabilitated. Senju Kagawa's third brother, Senju Kagawa, was quite gifted in sword play. At the age of 7, he could wield a broadsword with great speed, looking very impressive. Even the teacher who taught him sword play said that Senju Kagawa was already a master. Even someone like Senju Wajian, who is now known as a swordsmanship genius with great talent, could barely lift a sword at Senju Kagamakiwa's age. Under the golden sunlight, the Thousand Hands Mirror River is moving against the sun. Although the temperature in spring is not high, the sun is quite strong near noon, so it is definitely not comfortable to exercise under such sunlight. Sweat dripped down from Senju Kagawa's hair, his forehead and temples were covered with sweat, and his face was red from the sun. Senju Kagawa's white hair stuck to his scalp, and his clothes were soaked with sweat. The clothes on his back stuck to his body, sticky and greasy. Senju Kagawa hated this feeling. Ever since he made up his mind to pick up the Nichiren sword, Senju Kagamakiwa has humbly asked his brother Kawurama how he had mastered the swordsmanship so well. After hearing that Senju Kagawa was interested in swordsmanship and already owned a sword of his own, Senju Kagawa was not shy at all and was very happy to pass on his experience to Senju Kagawa. Ever since Senju Fujian confirmed that Senju Kagawa was capable of taking on tasks independently, he seldom came to train Senju Kagawa personally. Senju Wajian just filled the vacancy of the teacher position. So, from that day on, the Senju people would often see a little boy with short white hair, who was 3 heads tall, lifting weights on the training ground. Yes, weightlifting. In addition to the most basic physical training, Senju Kagamakiwa needs to do strength training through weightlifting. Senju Kama told Senju Kagawa that the most effective way to do strength training is to lift weights. As Senju Kagami said, after several days of weightlifting training, Senju Kagami's strength and grip strength have been greatly improved, and even a layer of muscle can be vaguely seen on his thin arms. Senju Kagawa is now able to pick up the sun blade without letting it fall to the ground. Although he still holds it with both hands, this is already a great improvement. In addition, Senju Jingchuan has clearly felt a stronger sense of power when boxing recently, and is no longer as weak and powerless as before. However, correspondingly, daily weightlifting also makes Senju Kagawa's arms very sore. Although Senju Kagawa can rely on pain immunity cards to reduce pain, the soreness and weakness in his arms will not disappear the next day, and it may even be so severe that Senju Kagawa can't lift his hands. So, every night, Senju Wajian would come to help Kagamakiwa massage the sore muscles in his arms to ensure that Kagamakiwa could sleep well and continue training the next day. So, over the past month, they not only practiced together, but also ate and slept together, and even massaged each other's sore muscles at night. As a result, the relationship between Senju Kagawa and Watama can be said to have made great progress. Xiao Jingchuan, come and have dinner. Senju Kagawa called out to Senju Jingchuan, who was immersed in training outside the training ground. Senju Wajian came to deliver food to Senju Jingchuan again. The two of them sat together in the grove outside the training ground, enjoying delicious rice balls and chatting about their training experiences. Senju Wajian used a handkerchief to wipe the sweat off Senju Jingchuan's face, then asked him to sit under the shade of a tree and fanned him with a fan. The two brothers chatted and imagined the future. However, good times are not long. Not long after, Senju Wajian died on the battlefield. When the bad news came, Senju Kagawa was practicing swordsmanship on the training ground. Chapter 32. Ninja Love. During this period, the Senju clan and the Uyghur clan had a conflict over a mission. Under the instigation of many forces, the conflict between the two clans became increasingly serious. In addition, the two clans had long-standing grievances, and what was originally just a small conflict finally evolved into a war. Many young ninjas from the Senju clan and the Hago Romo clan were also forced to go to the battlefield. Senju Kagamakiwa was not selected because he was not yet 5 years old. But as mature ninjas over the age of 7, Senju Kagamakuwa's 4 brothers all need to go to the battlefield. Senju Kawarama is an excellent ninja. He is good at swordsmanship, proficient in ninjutsu, has rich experience in fighting enemies, can complete tasks excellently, obeys the orders of ninjas, and always puts the interests of the Senju clan first. He is a perfect Senju ninja. However, it was this excellent and serious Senju ninja who sacrificed himself in order to lead the enemy away and protect his teammates during the war with the Hagoromo clan. Senju Wajian died in battle, killed by the swords of the Hagoromo clan. When he heard the sad news, Senju Kagawa was practicing swinging the sword according to the method taught by Wajian. Even when he stood in front of the coffin in Senju Wajian's room, Senju Jingchuan still felt a strong sense of unreality in his heart. The coffin contains the remains of Senju Wajian. That was picked up by Senju Watama's teammates on the battlefield. At the funeral, not only will there be the coffin of Senju Wajian, but all the clan members who died in the battlefield between the Senju and Hagoromo clans will be buried today. In front of Senju Kagamakuwa were hundreds of coffins that were about to be buried in the ground. Most of them contained only body parts, and many ninjas didn't even have any body parts left. The coffins contained only the clothes they had worn. On this day, the sky was blue and it was good weather that we hadn't seen in a long time. It was raining here yesterday, and it rained intermittently for 3 days until this morning. The air is very fresh, and if you smell it carefully, you can smell the fragrance of the soil. Senju Kagamakuwa likes the scent of grass mixed with the smell of soil after the rain. A large amount of wet soil was turned up and then covered the top of the coffin. The turned up soil revealed earthworms with their heads raised. Senju Jingchuan watched as his third brother's coffin was completely buried. He thought that he might hate the taste now. His gentle and considerate brother was buried in a pile of stinking soil, and there were even disgusting insects gnawing at his remains. This is simply ridiculous. Brother Wajian also said that when he comes back he will take me to buy some conpieto. Senju Kagamakuwa thought inappropriately. Senju Kama is a genius. Senju Kagamakuwa's fourth brother Senju Itama was crying beside me. He usually has the best relationship with brother Wajian, and he must be the saddest now. The hand he was holding, Kagamaikawa Senju's, was shaking constantly, and he didn't know whether it was because of sadness or fear. Senju Kagawa's teeth couldn't help but tremble. Was it because it was too cold? He clenched his upper and lower rows of teeth together hard. My father, Senju Buddha, kept watching the funeral ceremony with a frown on his face. I wonder if he was observing a moment of silence for those souls who sacrificed their lives heroically. As a ninja, you are not allowed to cry. Senju Butsuma suddenly shouted, "We ninjas are born to die on the battlefield." Ninjas are born to die on the battlefield? What bullshit is that? Senju Kagawa's thoughts were wandering, and he couldn't help but refute Senju Fusuma in his heart. We should be thankful that we were able to recover some of the remains. Not only the Hagoromo clan participated in the battle this time, but also the Uchiha. They have always been cruel and ruthless. Uchiha? Senju Kagamakuwa couldn't help but think of the boy named Izuna, who might be from the Uchiha clan. Did his clan members also die in this war? Was he also deeply saddened by the sacrifice of his brothers and sisters? Senju Kagawa thought that his brothers had said before that the Uchiha were an evil clan. But why? If the Uchiha's relatives were killed and they wanted revenge, what reason is there to say that they are an evil clan? Senju Hashirama gritted his teeth and closed his eyes tightly. When he opened his eyes again, he screamed loudly. But Wajian is only 7 years old. When will this kind of war end? Senju Hashirama asked loudly, wanting to vent all the dissatisfaction and resentment in his heart. He hated this world full of wars, and hated this world that took his brother's life. If there is another war, who will be the next to die? Will it be him, Tobirama, Itama, or the youngest Kagawa? The long shadow of the death of his tribesmen completely shrouded his heart. He did not want to see any of his brothers die, especially in a ridiculous war. Qian Shao Buddha answered, his tone firm and unquestionable. Until all enemies are destroyed. All enemies were destroyed? But how could all enemies be destroyed? Without the Hagoromo clan, there might still be the Kagaya clan. Without the Uchiha clan, there might still be the Hyuga clan. It is impossible to stop human disputes. Where there are people, there will be interests, and where there are interests, there will be conflicts. This is caused by the human nature of seeking profit. What's more, ninjas are just tools for daimyo to create wars and mobilize territory. If you want to stop the dispute, just let there be only one person left in the world and let everyone else die. Senju Jingchuan couldn't help but sneer. Creating a world without war requires a difficult process. Senju Buddha continued to speak to himself, ignoring the reactions of the children. Kagamikawa saw that Senju Hashirama lowered his head and asked with an unclear expression. Even if it means sacrificing the child. When Senju Butsukin heard what Hashirama said, his eyes immediately became fierce. At the moment Hashirama's voice fell, Senju Butsukin suddenly raised his hand and punched Hashirama. His speed was too fast, so Senju Kagawa and others had no time to react. Hashirama was knocked to the ground. Brother Hashirama! Senju Kagawa couldn't help but scream out in surprise. Dad, you! Senju Tobirama, who was closest to him, immediately stepped forward to protect Senju Hashirama. Kagamigawa and Senju Itama also quickly stepped forward to check on Senju Hashirama's condition. The corner of Hashirama Senju's mouth was bleeding and his cheek was swollen. It was obvious that Senju Fusuma's punch was powerful, and it made Senju Hashirama see stars and sit on the ground for a long time to recover. Although Qian Shaofujian had beaten his brothers before, it was always a gentle pat and education, never such a strong one. This was a real punch. Thousand-armed Buddha seemed to be really angry. Senju Kagawa admired his elder brother Hashirama at this time. He used to respect him. When he saw Hashirama speak for the children who died in the war in a real and humane way, he already admired this elder brother. Hashirama Senju deserves everyone's admiration. I don't know if it was because the Senju Kagawa and the others surrounded Hashirama, making it difficult for Senju Butsuma to continue, or if he felt that this punch was enough to scare the children. In any case, he didn't fight anymore. He just shouted at Senju Hashirama. I won't allow you to insult Wajian. He died gloriously as a capable ninja. Not some kid. Not a child. But Wajian is only 7 years old. Even Senju Hashirama was heartbroken that his brother died in battle. Senju Fusuma was not even as good as Senju Kagawa. Senju Kagawa was completely gripped by the death of Kawarama at this point. It was indeed glorious for Kawarama to die as a ninja, but he was only a 7-year-old child. He was considered a genius by everyone. If there is no war, Senju Kawarama will definitely be a truly excellent and mature ninja in the future. I don't know what his brothers are thinking, but Senju Jingchuan is almost furious at what Senju Fujian said. The 7-year-old Senju Wajian was just a child to him. If it was in the world of his previous life, Senju Kama would have just been in elementary school. How could he have died in a war? Fuck the glorious ninjas! Senju Kagamikawa gritted his teeth and wished he could beat up Senju Fusuma on behalf of Hashirama. It's a pity that he doesn't have that ability. Senju Hashirama covered his red and swollen cheek, raised his eyes and glared at Senju Butsuma angrily. This time, without waiting for Hashirama Senju to say anything, Senju Kagawa couldn't help it. He stood up and shouted loudly to the Thousand Hands Buddha. Wajian is a ninja, but he's also a child. My brother, Senju Kawarama, he's just a child who just turned 7 years old. After hearing these words, Thousand-Handed Buddha became furious. He glared at Thousand-Handed Jingchuan fiercely and raised his hand as if to hit him. Senju Jingchuan had already closed his eyes, preparing for the slap. Father! Father! Maybe because his brothers were protecting Qian Shao Jingchuan tightly, Qian Shao Fujian did not strike down with that palm. He put down his hand, then turned and left. Senju Jingchuan opened his eyes and saw his departing figure. He couldn't help but yelled again. This kind of ninja world is totally wrong. Thousand-Handed Buddha's footsteps paused, and Thousand-Handed Jingchuan saw that his hands were clenched tightly, but he no longer paid attention to Thousand-Handed Jingchuan. Brother Hashirama, are you okay? After seeing that Senju Butsuma showed no sign of turning back, Senju Itama anxiously asked about Senju Hashirama's condition. Don't you know what will happen if you talk back to your father? Senju Tobirama warned sternly, then turned his head and glared at Senju Kagawa, saying, Kagawa, you too. Too impulsive. Senju Kagawa glanced around casually, obviously not taking Senju Tobirama's warning seriously. But Senju Hashirama was obviously not in a very good mood, and his eyes were determined. Itama, Tobirama, and Kagamigawa. I just don't want you to die in vain. What love, Senju clan? What a unique ninja! Is this just the adults, working together to force a child to death? What's the difference between what we do and what the Uchiha do? Senju Hashirama stood up suddenly and questioned Senju Butsuma, who was about to leave, with dissatisfaction. This is respect for the enemy. Even if it is a baby, as long as he holds a weapon, he must be regarded as an enemy, and training a child to become an independent ninja is the love of a parent. Senju Butsuma tilted his head and spoke in a firm tone. Love? What kind of love is this? Senju Kagawa doesn't understand this kind of love. Just as he didn't understand this deformed ninja world. Chapter 33. In short, the conversation between Senju Butsuma and Senju Hashirama ended unpleasantly. After the funeral, most of the Senju clan members left, only Senju Kagawa and his brothers stayed here, and Senju Tobirama began to criticize Senju Hashirama and Senju Kagawa again. As the sun sets, the dim sunset light shines through the jungle, creating lines of light and dark. Senju Kagamakuwa and his three brothers stayed on a big wooden stake. After talking for a while, Tobirama Senju saw that Kagamakuwa and Hashirama did not respond, and he could not help but sigh. Several people were silent and no one spoke for a while. The chirping of birds and insects in the woods gradually stopped, and only the rustling sound of leaves blown by the wind could be heard. Senju Tobirama crossed his arms and hugged them in front of his chest, breaking the silence first. You adults are all fools. If you want to end the war, why not just make an agreement with your enemies and stop fighting? What Senju Tobirama said makes sense. In Senju Kagamakuwa's view, the most likely way to resolve the conflict is to conclude an agreement. Either everyone's strength is checked and balanced, and they can only conclude agreements to maintain a relative balance, or they are stronger than all enemies, so that their enemies can only be afraid and dare not even think of resisting. However, the current situation in the ninja world is that the Senju and Uchiha are evenly matched, and the two are dominant. The best solution is for the two companies to form an alliance. But the two families have been fighting for 100 years and have long-standing grudges. How could they form an alliance so easily? But if we do this, wouldn't those parents, brothers, and companions who were killed have died in vain? Senju Itama obviously did not agree with this proposal. He thought of his brother Senju Wajian, and also of other brothers who fought together but were left on the battlefield forever. Senju Jingchuan sighed in his heart. You see, resolving hatred is not something that can be done overnight. There will always be people who are dissatisfied. Senju Tobirama looked at Senju Itama seriously and said in a stern voice. If you keep saying things like that, you'll die too. You and the adults are too impulsive. What Senju Tobirama said was right. Itama was a very emotional child, easily provoked by emotions. The death of Senju Kama today may have planted a seed of hatred in his heart. From now on, ninjas only need to suppress their emotions, establish strict rules, and abide by them to avoid unnecessary wars. Senju Tobirama continued to express his views. Senju Kagamakuwa thought that what his second brother Tobirama said made sense. If you think about it carefully, it is because the age threshold of ninjas is generally low, and children are always more emotional than adults. Therefore, when they witnessed the death of their relatives and friends when they were young, the seeds of hatred took root deeper and more fiercely in their hearts. When these ninjas grew up, they would never think of forming an alliance with their enemies, because the hatred in their hearts when they were young had already grown into a towering tree. In this case, perhaps only fighting to the death is a worthy ending for a ninja. Adults are always subject to various interests and rules. Perhaps in the adult world, rules are a better way of restraint. Senju Hashirama lowered his head, lowered his eyebrows, and asked. A true agreement, an alliance, is it really impossible to achieve? Kagamakuwa looked at Hashirama Senju, his elder brother in this life. He had long known that Hashirama Senju had always been committed to peace. He can still maintain a heart of great love in a place like the ninja world. This is one of the reasons why Senju Kagamakuwa admires him. Senju Kagawa couldn't bear to see Hashirama's confusion, he couldn't help but patted Senju Hashirama on the head, and then answered loudly. Certainly. It can be done. Senju Hashirama looked up at his youngest brother. At this time, the younger brother, Senju Kagawa, stood straight, and the golden sunlight fell completely on him. Senju Hashirama heard his brother, Senju Kagamakuwa, speak out his thoughts. Alliance. It's a very good choice. If the ninja world is fundamentally wrong, why don't we change it? Sooner or later, we will find a real way that does not require sacrificing children. Senju Hashirama stood up, and he felt his body filled with strength and fighting spirit again. Yes, how come he is not as thorough as a 5-year-old child? Since the rules of the ninja world are wrong, then make new rules. Senju Hashirama finally showed a sunny smile on his face again. He rubbed Senju Kagawa's head, his palm was very warm, and he agreed. That's right. Kagami-chan is right. Senju Itama showed a bewildered expression when he saw this. He was still a child. Seeing that his brothers all agreed with this proposal, even though he was still a little hesitant, he immediately agreed. Alliance? But since Hashirama-san and Kagami-kawa both think so, then I agree too. Seeing this, Hashirama Senju couldn't help but smile even more happily. Being able to get the approval of his younger brothers, he felt that he was one step closer to success. Since that day, Senju Kagawa practiced swordsmanship even harder. No one knew why, maybe he just wanted to practice Senju Kagami's part as well. Senju Kagawa still remembers that night. After he returned home, Senju Kazuki came to find him and handed him a bag of Kanpieto. Senju Kazuki is Senju Kazuma's teammate in this war. He told Senju Kagawa, Werema said that after leaving the battlefield, he would bring you some Kanpieto. Senju Kagami-kawa took the bag of Kanpieto with almost trembling hands. He no longer remembered how he felt at that time. Is it sadness? No, maybe I'm a little numb. Senju Jingchuan felt his body getting colder and colder. He almost couldn't feel the existence of his body, as if his soul had left his body. But in the eyes of others, his condition should be pretty good, right? He thanked Kazuki Senju, asked about the health of Neko's grandmother, and then politely said good night to Kazuki Senju. Senju Kagami-kawa did not notice the complicated expression on Senju Kazuki's face when he looked at him. He returned to his room with numb limbs and almost trembling hands and feet. He ignored the words of concern from his brothers, walked straight into his own room, closed the door, and went to bed. Senshao Jingchuan Inquiry System. System, if I put this bag of candy into the system space, will it go bad? The system promptly replied, no. The time in the system space is static. So Senju Jingchuan put the bag of Kanpieto into the grid of the system space. He covered his head with the quilt, and then found that the quilt was a little wet and his nose was a little blocked. He thought, there are still sequelae. The death of Senju Kama still has sequelae. Chapter 34. After a long period of devilish training, Jingchuan also felt physically and mentally exhausted. The long and intense training also made his muscles sore, but now it was not Senju Wajian who helped him massage, but the other 3 brothers. Just like people who do the same thing for a long time will become bored and tired and lose some motivation. Qianshao Jingchuan is not as motivated now as he was at the beginning. Seeing how hard Senju Jingchuan worked, several brothers suggested that Jingchuan take a few days off. They were really worried that Senju Jingchuan would be like a string that was stretched taut for too long and then break. So, Senju Jingchuan gave himself a day off. To be honest, Senju Kagawa himself also felt a little tired. Senju Jingchuan, who had given himself a day off, decided to sneak out of the clan territory to hunt some prey. He hadn't eaten meat for a long time. After preparing his tools, Senshao Jingchuan planned to sneak out of the tribe. But in the forest he found an unexpected figure. The sneaky guy in the front with the black bowler hair and the tacky green clothes. If nothing unexpected happens, it should be his elder brother Senju Hashirama, right? Senju Hashirama's ears twitched a few times. A few seconds later, Hashirama Senju seemed to have suddenly discovered something. He turned his head sharply, but only saw swaying grass leaves. He stared at the bush vigilantly, and then a hare appeared. Senju Hashirama looked at the little rabbit with white fur and red eyes and scratched his head in confusion. Is this his illusion? Senju Hashirama was still a little worried. After all, if Senju Busama knew who he was going to meet today, it might cause trouble. So Senju Hashirama cautiously went forward to check the situation. Walking to the edge of the grass, Hashirama Senju felt that there was something hidden in the grass. He suddenly lifted the grass and saw only a few ants facing him. There was nothing, not even a trace of human footprints, only some messy branches and leaves scattered around. Maybe some other small animal stepped on it. Senju Hashirama thought. After personally checking, Senju Hashirama finally felt relieved. He stopped looking around nervously and continued to walk forward, striding towards his destination. He looked very happy and walked briskly. Senju Kagawa, who was hiding in the tree, breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he discovered Senju Hashirama's actions in advance and threw a rabbit into the bushes in advance to avoid it. However, when he saw Hashirama Senju's steps becoming increasingly brisk as if he was sure that no one was following him, Kagamikawa Senju couldn't help but start thinking. Why is Hashirama-san so happy? Come to think of it, he seems to have sneaked out for several days. There is no war recently, and he has no mission to complete. These past few days, Hashirama-san has been leaving early and coming back late. The more Senju Jingchuan thought about it, the more he felt something was wrong. He remembered that Senju Hashirama always seemed to be in a daze during dinner these past few nights, and he would smile foolishly at the air from time to time. Sometimes I would laugh foolishly when practicing ninjutsu. Could it be? Is Hashirama-san in love? The more Senju Kagamikawa thought about it, the more he felt that this possibility was very high. After all, Senju Hashirama was now 12 years old, which was the age when he might fall in love for the first time. Moreover, children in the ninja world generally matured precociously. It seems normal for Hashirama Senju to be in a relationship at this age and to ask a little girl out of the clan for a date. But why not meet in the clan territory? Senju Kagawa was a little confused. In his opinion, Senju Fushima was not a father who would restrict his children in this regard. He even thought that Senju Fushima would be happy for Senju Hashirama to fall in love with a girl, because this would help the Senju clan to expand as soon as possible. Could it be a girl from another ninja clan? The more Senju Kagamikawa thought about it, the more he felt it was possible. This time he could no longer sit still, although Hashirama Senju was an elder brother whom he admired very much, and even at certain times it could be seen that Hashirama Senju's nature was not simple at all, and he might even be a black man. But after all, Hashirama Senju is still a little kid who has never been in love. Although Senju Kagawa himself has never been in love, he firmly believes that those who are involved in the relationship are more confused than those who are not involved. He decided to follow Hashirama Senju to see what was going on. He is not stalking, he is clearly concerned about his elder brother, Senju Hashirama. Senju Kagawa thought so in his heart. So, Senju Kagamigawa followed Senju Hashirama to the Nangu River. This is where he often comes to catch fish. Senju Kagamigawa even met Izuna, who might be from the Uchiha clan. When thinking of the Uchiha clan, Senju Kagamigawa couldn't help but feel a little subtle. He hid behind a big tree and watched carefully. Senju Kagamikawa discovered that his elder brother Senju Hashirama first picked up a stone of appropriate size from the ground, and then weighed the stone in his hand. Senju Kagamikawa was wondering what Hashirama was going to do. But Senju Hashirama suddenly stopped moving. He stopped as if waiting for someone. Big brother is looking at the other side. It seems that the person he is waiting for is not from the Senju clan. Senju Kagawa speculated. After a while, Senju Kagamikawa saw a man appear in the bushes on the opposite bank, a boy who was about the same height as Senju Hashirama. The boy was dressed much more fashionably than Senju Hashirama, all in black, with long hair that was all banged up. Looking closely, wasn't that boy the boy that Senju Kagamikawa had met in the small town in the land of lightning Madara? Senju Kagamikawa has a deep impression of Madara and has a good impression of him. After all, he was the boy who contributed a lot of value to Senju Kagamikawa. Speaking of, ever since Kagami Senju came back from completing that mission, he discovered that his elder brother Hashirama Senju's stickiness value had also become 7, so he now finds it difficult to determine who the protagonist of this comic is. Is it Madara or Hashirama Senju? By the way, Madara's appearance is really exquisite, and the protagonist is usually a good-looking person. So it seems that the possibility of Madara being the protagonist is greater than that of Hashirama. Just when Kagami Senju was thinking for a few seconds, Hashirama Senju and Madara acted at the same time, and they threw the stones in their hands out in unison. The two stones floated and jumped on the water, then reached their respective opposite banks and were held in the hands of Madara and Hashirama. It's skipping stones. Senju Kagawa couldn't help but reveal his dead fish eyes. He thought his brother Hashirama was going to do something earth-shattering with the stone. It turned out to be just skipping stones. Hashirama. Madara on the other side suddenly called out Senju Hashirama's name. Ah! I know. Senju Hashirama responded. Senju Jingchuan was wondering what the two of them were talking about. But soon, he no longer had to guess. Because Hashirama Senju threw the stone in his hand over, and the target was exactly the hiding place of Senju Kagawa. Senju Hashirama discovered Senju Kagamigawa. Then, Senju Jingchuan came out. Now that it has been discovered, there is no point in hiding. Hashirama Senju smiled when he saw that it was Kagamigawa hiding there. Senju Kagawa awkwardly raised his hand and greeted the two. Hey! Hashirama-san, and long time no see, Brother Ben. Chapter 35. Going to the battlefield. Time passed quickly and it was noon. The chirping of insects in the woods gradually became louder. The hot noon became increasingly unbearable for the insects, and their chirping became more impatient and numerous. But the situation here with Qian Shao Jingchuan and the other two was peaceful. When Hashirama Senju asked in confusion about how the two met, Kagamigawa Senju and Madara both tacitly passed it over, saying only that they met during a mission and happened to work together for a while, without mentioning the strange events that they encountered in that small town. Senju Hashirama saw that neither of them wanted to elaborate, so he just said jokingly. Ah! Madara actually met Kagami-chan first. I'm kind of jealous. Senju Kagamigawa was a little embarrassed at first because he hadn't seen Madara for a long time, but after chatting for a few words, the slight awkwardness disappeared. Senju Kagamigawa naturally recalled the shameless appearance he had when he was with Madara, and took the opportunity to act coquettishly towards Madara, holding Madara's hand to increase his stickiness value. Senju Jingchuan is a very sociable person, and he will do anything to increase his sticker value. After Madara's attitude towards the Senju Kagami River became a little more natural, he no longer felt as reserved as he was at the beginning. After all, Madara originally treated Kagami-kawa Senju as his younger brother. Who made Kagami-kawa Senju so good at hitting straight balls, and he happened to have a delicate appearance and a pair of beautiful black almond eyes that resembled Madara's younger brother Izuna. The more they talked, the more they felt that they had similar interests and aspirations, so they became happier and chatted enthusiastically. I didn't expect that Kagamigawa and Madara would get along so well. If I had known that you two had met before and had such a good relationship, I would have brought Kagamigawa here a few times before. Ha ha ha. Senju Hashirama laughed heartily. But why was Kagamigawa acting so sneaky today? The way you looked at Madara at first was so strange. It has to be said that Hashirama Senju is really an intuitive creature at times. Senju Hashirama guessed correctly. At first, Senju Kagawa was indeed a little embarrassed. The main reason for the embarrassment was that he initially thought that Hashirama Senju was dating his young girlfriend, so when he found out that the person Hashirama Senju was dating was Madara, he felt a little weird. When Senju Hashirama asked this embarrassing question, Senju Kagamigawa couldn't help but glare at Senju Hashirama. Senju Hashirama scratched his head in confusion. He obviously didn't realize why Senju Kagamigawa suddenly became angry. Senju Jingchuan made up a random excuse and brushed the matter aside. They chatted for a while longer, then exchanged some training and physical training tips before saying goodbye. It was almost noon and it was time for them to return to their tribe. Before leaving, Senju Kagamigawa stopped and turned to look at Madara's back as he walked away. It is known that Izuna came from the other side. Senju Kagamigawa guessed that Izuna was from the Uchiha clan. Madara also came from the other side, and he had a typical Uchiha appearance. In addition, Madara is very good at shuriken techniques and hidden weapons such as kunao and senbon. Senju Kagamigawa once saw Madara use shuriken, which was very powerful, with tricky angles and very skillful movements. The Senju clan, who are good at physical skills, have no connection with shuriken techniques, while the Uchiha clan, who possess the Sharingan and have extraordinary eyesight, happen to be very good at shuriken and other hidden weapons. And so, should he call Madara Uchiha Madara? Xiao Jingchuan, what's wrong? Senju Hashirama noticed that Jingchuan stopped and turned around to ask. When he looked towards the other side, he could no longer see Madara's back. Brother Hashirama. Although I know that ninjas don't reveal their identities to each other, lest they be killed. Senju Kagamigawa looked at the dazed Senju Hashirama and finally asked. Hashirama-san, have you ever guessed Madara-san's identity? Senju Hashirama was completely stunned. He turned his head away, obviously avoiding the question, and just said, Kagami-kawa, he is Madara, my best friend, and your brother Madara. Senju Jingchuan was no longer hesitant, he understood. Time passed quickly, and the Senju and Uchiha started war again. But this time, Senju Jingchuan had no way of avoiding the war, a war he had to participate in. Senju Kagamikawa has completed a mission and received recognition from his fellow ninjas. This is a good thing, but it also proves that Senju Kagamikawa already has the ability to fight independently. Moreover, Senju Kagamikawa is getting closer to his 5th birthday, and he is old enough to go to the battlefield. In the ninja world, 5 years old is the mark that distinguishes a child from a warrior. To sum up, Senju Kagamikawa had to go to the battlefield this time. This war between Senju and Uchiha did not come suddenly. The conflict between the two sides had been going on for a long time, so Senju Kagamikawa had already anticipated it. Before going to the battlefield, Senju Jingchuan prepared himself mentally. If he really had to kill someone, he would have no choice, right? Senju Jingchuan has never killed anyone, a real human, not counting the monsters from before. If Senju Jingchuan were asked to kill a monster, he would only feel curious but would not have any resistance. However, if the target was a human, it would be really difficult for Senju Jingchuan, who has been bathed in red genes since childhood, to do it. Senju Tobirama saw Kagamikawa's anxiety before going to the battlefield. At that time, he was just completing a mission, not a simple escort mission. Senju Jingchuan could smell the sharp smell of blood coming from Senju Tobirama. After Senju Tobirama learned why Kagamikawa was anxious, he naturally touched Kagamikawa's head, which had the same short white hair as his. He said, Xiao Jingchuan is a very gentle and delicate child. But don't be afraid. Senju Tobirama stopped talking. However, Senju Jingchuan soon became less nervous. Because he found that his brothers were obviously more nervous than he was. Senju Hashirama paced back and forth in the room, then came over and reminded Kagamikawa and Itama what to pay attention to on the battlefield, how to save their lives, and that life is the most important thing. Senju Itama complained that Hashirama was too nervous. After all, it was not the first time for Senju Itama to go to the battlefield. And Senju Tobirama was constantly counting the things that Senju Kagamikawa was going to take to the battlefield: kunao, scrolls, detonating tags. In fact, he had checked them 3 or 4 times. Senju Itama kept holding Kagamikawa's hand, telling him to follow him closely when they went to the battlefield and not to fall behind. It can be seen that the brothers are very worried about him. It is not unreasonable for the brothers to worry about Senju Jingchuan's first battle on the battlefield. They have all lived with the 1,000-armed Buddha since childhood and have understood their future early on, so they have made sufficient psychological preparations. Moreover, only Senju Kagamikawa had only learned physical skills for less than a year, had no idea how to extract chakra, and could barely lift a knife. The only thing that made them feel at ease was that Senju Kagamikawa's medical ninjutsu was really powerful. Senju Kagamikawa was also very aware of his own shortcomings, so on the battlefield he consciously stayed in the middle and rear to fight. Except for situations where he had to go to the battlefield, he usually stayed in the rear as a medical ninja. After arriving on the battlefield, Senju Jingchuan finally understood the cruelty of the battlefield. The battlefield was almost littered with corpses and body parts, and was covered in blood. If it happened in the previous life, and Ninja World happened to be a game, it would definitely not escape the sanctions of the miner's health system. Senju Kagamikawa, who was facing the rear, saw a scene comparable to purgatory on Earth. Most of the Senju ninjas were lucky enough to reach the rear alive, and it was a great fortune to be able to save their lives, so, in addition to the serious injuries, most of them were missing limbs. And Senju Kagamikawa finally killed the first person on the battlefield. It was a mature Uchiha ninja whom he killed together with Senju Itama. The ninja almost plunged the knife into Itama's heart. So Senju Kagamikawa, who came hurriedly, killed the Uchiha ninja with a knife. Hot blood gushed out and splashed on Senju Kagawa's face and body. The blood exuded a scorching heat. Even in midsummer, Senshao Jingchuan felt that the temperature was far less hot than the blood. He saw that before the Uchiha fell, his expression was very surprised, and his black eyes were staring at him, as if he wanted to carve him into his soul. That look of resentment. Senju Jingchuan hurriedly covered his eyes with his hands, trying to close his eyes. However, When Senju Kagamakuwa placed his hand over the eyes of the Uchiha ninja, a popping sound was heard, and the palm of Senju Kagamakuwa's hand became wet and sticky. The eyeball of the Uchiha ninja exploded like a balloon. This time, Senju Jingchuan was completely stunned. The Uchiha ninja's eyes were hollow and bloody. The scene before my eyes looked very much like the horror movie I had seen in my previous life. No, this is scarier than a horror movie because it is reality. He knew that it was a technique used by the Uchiha ninja to prevent the enemy from obtaining the Sharingan, a technique that destroys the eyes. Even though the Uchiha ninja in front of him didn't have the Sharingan, the flesh and blood on the palm of his hand was like a maggot attached to his bones, as if it was stuck to Senju Jingchuan's soul and could not be washed away no matter what. This is inevitable. This is unavoidable. If I don't kill him, he will kill my Itama brother. Senju Jingchuan comforted himself in this way and strengthened his mental strength. He was an Uchiha ninja about 11 or 12 years old, about the same age as Hashirama Senju. Sorry. Senju Jingchuan thought, he really still hated this world. He hated this world that made children go to the battlefield. Fuck the ninja world. The worst happened. Senju Jingchuan was left alone. Unfortunately, he was separated from Senju Itama and his group. Unfortunately, he was surrounded by several Uchiha ninjas. Even more unfortunately, he had run out of detonating tags and kunao. It's so damn isolated and helpless. Chapter 36, Fierce Battle after being left alone. When Senju Kagamigawa, Senju Itama, and their group were transporting supplies to the front line, they were discovered by a dozen Uchiha who were coming towards them. More than a dozen Uchiha ninjas surrounded Senju Kagamakuwa and his companions. There was no other way. Qian Shao Jingchuan and his companions could only leave those supplies behind and put their own lives first. After all, no one knows how many of the Uchiha ninjas, all of whom are adults, have opened their eyes. The enemy outnumbers us, it's a really bad situation. Senju Kagamakuwa took advantage of the Uchiha ninjas' inattention and sounded the alarm. Beautiful fireworks exploded in the dark, which was a signal for requesting support. Then, Senju Kagawa took out his Nichiren sword and began the battle. The Uchiha on the opposite side are obviously not the type that are good at close combat. They are better at fire style, lightning style, hidden weapons and, perhaps the most difficult Sharingan. Therefore, under this situation where the opponent's long-range offensive was very powerful, the situation of Senju Jingchuan and his group was not very good. In fact, for some reason, several Uchiha ninjas kept chasing me, Senju Kagamakuwa, like hawks and dogs biting their prey. The eyes of those Uchiha ninjas were vicious, revealing the hostility and bloodiness acquired on the battlefield. Just looking at their dark eyes made one feel as if one was being sucked into the world of darkness. In desperation, Senju Jingchuan was forced to be alone. Senju Kagamakuwa couldn't run like a ninja, so he was at a huge disadvantage in speed. He just tried his best to run towards the Senju's base camp, hoping that a few Senju ninjas would come to support him on the way. Fire Release, Phoenix Immortal Fire Technique. Fire Style, Fire Dragon Bullet Technique. Fire Style, Phoenix Flower Chlored Technique. The Uchiha ninjas used fire jutsu to surround the Senju Kagami River. Countless flames came towards me. The huge fire dragon formed by the Fire Dragon Bullet Technique pounced on Senju Kagawa. He could avoid the fire dragon, but at the same time, he would be attacked by the flames surrounding the fire dragon that were like the seeds of the impatience flower shot out by the impatience missile. They even used the impatience chlored technique, attaching flames to the flying shurikens, making the shurikens mixed with scorching heat and attacking the Senju Kagami River like impatience scattered all over the sky. The flames around, like balsam seeds, were controlled by the caster's chakra. What's more, there were high-speed rotating shurikens in the middle of several of the flame balls. Senju Kagawa had no way to avoid them. No way. We can only fight head-on. Senju Jingchuan stopped dodging. He stopped running and turned his head towards the flames that were getting closer and closer to him. The firelight illuminated Senju Jingchuan's tender and fair little face, and flames flickered in his black eyes. In the pitch-black eyes, fire is the only vitality. He adjusted his breathing and assumed the starting posture of sun breathing. Congratulations, Senju Kagawa can now finally hold the sun blade with both hands without shaking, although the power of the move has not yet been trained. Senju Kagawa began to use both hands to swing the sun blade in a circle. This time he will use the most powerful move he has ever used, sun breathing one form round dance. Not only that, Senju Kagawa covered his entire body with the flames in his body to act as a protective layer, and directed the flames to the sun blade to increase the power of the sun breathing, making up for the fact that he could not fully exert the maximum power of the sun breathing. Breathing of the Sun One Form Round Dance. As Senju Kagawa swung his blade, the silver-white blade gradually turned into a color of red and black, the same color as the pirated Nichiren sword that Senju Kagawa had exchanged. At the same time, bright red flames covered the entire blade, and as a circular slash was swung, the flames wrapped around Senju Jingchuan's entire body. Immediately afterwards, Qian Shao Jingchuan used another move without stopping. Breathing of the Sun 11th Form Dance of the Dragon Head of the Corona. Senju Kagawa swung quickly, launching high-speed continuous slashes in an instant, and the flames between the blades formed a visual effect like a flying fire dragon. At the same time, Senju Jingchuan relied on the blade to transfer a large amount of flames to this move, finally forming a fire dragon comparable to the size of the opponent's fire dragon bomb. Then Senju Jingchuan slashed hard and sent this move to the opposite side at full speed. Although Senju Kagawa's sword swinging speed was not fast enough to support him using this move, his flames could make up for the lack of power of this move, exchanging fewer strikes for greater power. Then, the flames surrounded the huge flying fire dragon, as if there was a real fire dragon dancing a waltz, spinning and rushing towards the opposite side at a rapid speed. The fire dragon bullet collided with Senju Kagawa's flying fire dragon, causing a powerful explosion. Qian Shao Jingchuan was suddenly pushed more than 10 meters away, and then he immediately called out the ugly monster. The ugly monster stood in front of Senju Jingchuan, its body became huge, and its flesh wings tightly wrapped Senju Jingchuan, and then blocked the flying shuriken. Swish, the shuriken slashed across the ugly monster's body, and then doon it was wrapped up. The slime of the ugly monster is corrosive, and the shuriken's corners were corroded away the moment it came into contact with the slime. After being wrapped by the ugly monster's slippery skin, the shuriken was corroded to the point where nothing was left. Thanks to the protection of the ugly monster, Senju Jingchuan was not injured in the fall. But the ugly monster's target was too big, so it returned to the flame inside Senju Jingchuan's body. Now the most serious wounds on Senju Jingchuan's body were the scratches from the hidden weapon and the burns from the fire shock wave just now. However, the most serious thing was actually the after effects of Senju Kagawa's use of the sun-breathing slash just now. Senju Kagawa's strength was too small and his control was insufficient, and quickly swinging the sun blade would only strain his wrist and arm. What's more, the high-intensity breathing method just now has damaged Senju Jingchuan's lungs. Now Senju Jingchuan can smell the strong smell of blood in his nasal cavity every time he breathes. Senju Jingchuan's healing technique was working non-stop and soon healed some of the wounds, but the sequelae left by the breathing method could not be healed so quickly. The 3 Uchiha ninjas were also affected by the shock wave, but they obviously did not want to give up on killing Senju Kagamakuwa. Senju Kagamakuwa's extremely fast reaction ability and his moves that were just comparable to fire release made them feel a strong sense of crisis. If Senju Kagamakuwa was not completely eliminated here, he would become a serious threat to the Uchiha clan in the future when he grew up. So the 3 men ignored their own injuries and continued to chase after Senju Kagamakuwa. They only wanted to kill the man in front of them, a ninja with great potential who might harm their younger generations in the future. Senju Jingchuan hid in the woods, hoping to confuse the 3 people. Senju Jingchuan continued to run forward. He tried to adjust his breathing and ran towards Senju's base camp. But the Uchiha ninja was too fast and caught up with Senju Kagamakuwa in a short while. Senju Kagamakuwa turned his head and saw the 3 pairs of red eyes of the Uchiha ninja, with a black tadpole in them. He understood. Oh, it turns out to be the Sharingan. Then, Senju Kagamakuwa's mind became dazed. Ha, I got caught. Ding. System detection. The host's mind is attacked by an unknown foreign object. Now activate the defense function. Call. Senju Jingchuan felt a sharp pain in his brain, and then he suddenly came back to his senses. He felt a sharp pain in his left chest. He lowered his head. A hand was seen piercing his chest. Ah, my pain perception is not adjusted to 0. Senju Jingchuan thought blankly. The Uchiha ninja in front of him still had those ominous eyes open. Chapter 37. Please don't die. Senju Kagamakuwa felt the Uchiha ninja pull his hand out of his chest, and he felt the flesh and nerves in his chest being pulled. Because of the pain shielding, Senju Kagamakuwa could only feel a little bit of pain. This feeling is so strange. Did it hit your heart? Uchiha's Sharingan is really powerful. If the system hadn't activated the defense function, I might not even know how I died. The Uchiha ninja finally pulled his hand out of Senju Kagawa's bloody chest, and a stream of blood spurted out. Senju Kagawa covered his chest with his hands in a daze, but he couldn't stop the blood from flowing out. Then he felt a little cold, and the chill slowly spread from his fingertips to his limbs, and then to his entire body. Only my chest felt warm. Why? Oh, the blood is hot. Oh, it really hurts. Little brother. At the moment he fell, Senju Kagamakuwa seemed to hear the shouting of his second brother Senju Tobirama. That sound is really heart-wrenching. Actually, I'm not in much pain, Tobirama-san. Don't worry. Go save Banma-san. This was Senju Kagawa's last thought before he closed his eyes. In the darkness, the electronic sound of the system sounded in Senju Kagawa's mind. But Senju Kagawa, who was already in a deep coma and dying, obviously couldn't hear the sound. Skill Please Don't Die is passively activated, detected meets the usage conditions, currently in use. Ding Please Don't Die, incomplete version, was used successfully. Please remember that this skill is a passive skill and has not reached the conditions for active skill conversion. Please actively seek the conditions for active skill conversion. Inside the Senju clan's headquarters, Senju Hashirama was standing outside the tent, pacing anxiously. He rubbed his hands uncontrollably, with tear marks still lingering on his face. Senju Tobirama also leaned against a tree nearby, lowering his head, wondering what he was thinking about. His body was covered in blood, but most of it came from Senju Kagawa. Now if you look closely, even his originally shiny white hair has become much duller. In this day, Hashirama Senju and Tobirama Senju suffered too many shocks. Inside the tent was the younger brother who was being rescued, and outside the tent were the two older brothers who were in a state of confusion. At that time, Senju Kagawa and Senju Itama were attacked while transporting supplies. When they received the news and saw the fireworks alarm, it was too late. The two knew that the situation might be very bad, and they were mentally prepared to lose their younger brother. After all, the enemy was besieged by more than a dozen adult Uchiha ninjas, and even, among them were Uchiha ninjas who had already opened their eyes. But when they saw the scene, they couldn't hold back their grief. Senju Hashirama was the first to rush to the scene of the accident of his fourth brother Senju Itama, but it was obviously too late. All Hashirama Senju could see was the younger brother Itama's small body was covered in blood. He slid down and sat down under a huge stone, leaning his back against the stone. The stone was stained with the bright red blood of his younger brother. From the scars on the corpse, it can be seen that Senju Itama must have experienced a fierce battle before. The enemy used the Sharingan to confuse Senju Itama, and then pierced his young chest with a knife, crushing his beating heart, very similar to what Senju Kagawa encountered. However, the enemy's sword completely destroyed Senju Itama's hopes. Senju Hashirama hugged his younger brother Itama in despair and sadness, cold and sticky just like his younger brother Watama, and just like the countless Senju people who died in the battle. For no reason, Hashirama Senju felt a lot of resentment in his heart, resentment towards this cruel ninja world. He cried and growled in a suppressed voice, complaining about the cruelty of the world and why it had taken the lives of his two younger brothers one after another. And Senju Tobirama hurried to Senju Kagamakuwa because he saw two giant fire dragons colliding in the distance. He thought he would encounter the Senju ninja who was fighting fiercely with the Uchiha ninja. Unexpectedly, when he arrived, he found that his youngest brother, Senju Kagamakuwa, had been pierced through the chest by a hand. The enemy Uchiha ninjas quickly fled. Even though the three men still had burns on their bodies, the power of the Sharingan prevented the Senju ninjas from keeping them back. Senju Tobirama hugged his brother helplessly and sadly, but was surprised to find that his youngest brother was still breathing faintly. Senju Jingchuan opened his eyes, looked around blankly, and was surprised to find that he was still alive. The next second, he screamed in shock from the sharp pain in his chest. It hurts? System. Why is the pain shielding card useless? Senju Kagamakuwa asked the system fiercely. Host, if the system hadn't activated the protection function, you would have gone to the Pure Land by now. Please be more obedient. Also, the pain shield card conflicts with the skill card Please Don't Die, incomplete version. The system detected that the host was in a dying state, and the skill Please Don't Die incomplete version, was activated passively, saving your life. However, after using this skill, the pain shielding card will be ineffective for a period of time. The system explained in a dignified tone. Hey, why is your system getting more and more naughty? But, thank you. Senju Jingchuan was still very grateful to the system for saving his life. I finally managed to save my life. That's right. Itama-san. Senju Kagamakuwa suddenly thought of Senju Itama-san, who was besieged by Uchiha ninjas together with him. Although the two were forced to separate halfway, there were also several Uchiha ninjas in Senju Itama, and the situation was obviously not optimistic. Just as Senju Jingchuan was thinking, a man pushed open the door and walked in. Kamigawa, you're awake. Senju Hashirama shouted happily. Brother Hashirama, Brother Itama, how is he? How badly injured is he? Senju Kagamakuwa asked hurriedly. Senju Hashirama's expression was obviously stunned, his lips trembled slightly, and he was unable to answer Senju Kagawa's question. When Senju Kagamakuwa saw Senju Hashirama's reaction, how could he not understand what was happening? I'm afraid his brother Senju Itama has already. It can be seen that Hashirama Senju's face is also very pale, with thick, purple dark circles under his eyes, and he looks very depressed. But Senju Hashirama is usually a very cheerful person. The two of them stopped talking, and the atmosphere in the room became a little dull for a while. In the morning, the weather was clear. Within the Thousand Hands clan, Senju Itama was buried. He was slightly luckier than Watama as his body was intact, except for a big hole in his heart. The tribesmen did not choose to use earth escape techniques. Instead, they dug up the soil one shovel at a time, put it into the coffin, and then filled the pit with soil one shovel at a time. This was the Senju tribe's respect for their compatriots who died in the battle. The morning breeze was still a little chilly. Senju Jingchuan coughed slightly a few times, his injuries had not yet fully healed. Although that punch did not injure his heart, Senju Jingchuan's lungs were still damaged. Before the injury healed, every breath he took was painful. Senju Jingchuan felt that his heart seemed to be infected by the pain in his lungs. Otherwise, why was his heart throbbing with pain now? Senju Kagawa's eyes were a little dry, he just continued to watch in silence as Senju Itama's coffin was buried. Wow, wow, wow! The sound of a boy crying came from not far away. Senju Jingchuan looked up and saw a little boy who looked similar to Senju Jingchuan, with short black hair, and was trying to suppress his tears. Senju Jingchuan looked at the child for a few seconds, then looked away, feeling infinite sadness in his heart. Look, this world is so cruel. Senju Tobirama held Kagamakuwa's hand and was concerned about his situation. That's right, this time it was Senju Tobirama who held Kagamakuwa's hand. He held it so tightly, fearing that Kagamakuwa would be blown away by the wind. Senju Kagawa shook his head to indicate that he was fine, and then continued to lean on Senju Tobirama, barely keeping standing. There was no other reason, it was just that the injuries Senju Kagawa suffered were too severe and too painful. This time, Senju Hashirama did not speak again. The three brothers watched in silence as the coffin belonging to Itama was buried, next to Senju Wama. Thousand-handed Buddha also watched all this in silence. I don't know if it's Qian Shao Jingchuan's illusion, but he always feels. Thousand-armed Buddha, who had been standing straight, couldn't help but bend his back. That back figure looks like that of a sad father, desolate and bleak. Senju Jingchuan stared at the back of Senju Fujian in a daze. Then, Kagamakuwa let go of Senju Tobirama's hand, approached Senju Bujian, pulled up his hand, and then hugged him gently, although Kagamakuwa could only hug Senju Bujian's thigh. Senju Fujian squatted down and gave Jingchuan a real hug, and he hugged him very tightly. The embrace of the thousand-armed Buddha is very warm, very warm. Then, Kagamakuwa followed suit and gave Hashirama and Tobirama a hug. If you can't express the comfort with words, then use actions instead. The dead are gone, a new day has come, and we must always move on carrying the wishes of the dead. Chapter 38, The Unreliable Hashirama. The deaths of Senju Kagami and Senju Itama made Senju Kagamakuwa fully understand the cruelty of the ninja world, and he now wants to change this world very much. But obviously, this goal is still a long way off. After all, Senju Jingchuan is still lying in bed recovering from his injuries. Senju Jingchuan was seriously injured this time, and after using Please Don't Die, Senju Jingchuan's healing technique lost its effect on healing his injuries. Therefore, Senju Jingchuan healed the wound completely through his own healing ability this time. It took Qian Shao Jingchuan a full month to recover from his injuries. It has to be said that for the tenacious ninjas of the Senju clan, a month to heal was indeed slow, but for an ordinary person, it was really fast after all. Senju Kagamikawa's chest was pierced by the arm this time, and although his heart was not injured, his lungs were still severely torn. At this time, Senju Kagawa couldn't help but sigh at the amazing vitality of the thousand-hand ninja. After lying in bed for a long time, Senju Jingchuan felt like he was about to grow mushrooms. During his recovery period, only his two brothers kept him company every day. However, due to the heavy workload of his brothers every day, the time that Senju Jingchuan could spend with his two brothers was very limited. Occasionally, ninjas he knew well, such as Nariwa Senju, Aoyama Senju, and Ichiki Senju, would come to visit him. Of course, after learning from Ichiki Senju that Kagami Senju was seriously injured, Grandma Neko would often visit Kagami Senju, bringing her own toys and food. Although he is no longer a child in terms of his mental age, but a young man in his 20s, he is still happy to accept the kindness of Grandma Neko. Grandma Neko loves him as her own grandson, and he also regards Grandma Neko as his own grandmother. Senju Kagamikawa, who was an orphan in his previous life, cherishes all the kindness and love he encounters even if it is given to him inadvertently. It is worth mentioning that Senju Jingchuan's biological father in this life, Senju Fujian, also took time out of his busy schedule to visit Senju Jingchuan several times. Senju Jingchuan found this quite novel. Because of the lack of fatherly love for 4 years, Senju Kagawa and Senju Fujian didn't know how to get along with each other, especially Senju Fujian, who actually still had a grudge in his heart the death of Senju Haruko. Therefore, when Senju Fujian took the initiative to visit Senju Kagawa and tried to fulfill his duties as a father, Senju Kagawa was very surprised. Although Senju Fujian's performance was obviously a little stiff, maybe he didn't know how to get along with his youngest son. However, Senju Jingchuan himself was still very shameless in order to obtain more sticking points, so Senju Fujian's discomfort soon disappeared, and he and Senju Jingchuan got along more and more naturally, just like an ordinary father and son. Moreover, Senju Butsuma's relationship with Senju Hashirama and Senju Tobirama has become closer recently. He no longer openly says that Senju Hashirama's wish for peace is impossible to achieve, although the Senju Kagamikawa brothers all know that he still does not agree to form an alliance with other ninja clans. Senju Jingchuan thought that perhaps after losing his 2 young sons in succession within a few months, Senju Fujian finally realized that he had spent too little time with his children, so he poured all his long pent-up fatherly love onto his only 3 remaining children. And, it is worth mentioning that Senju Jingchuan just celebrated his 5th birthday. During this month he spent it in bed, and on his birthday he only ate a bowl of longevity noodles because his injuries had not yet healed and he couldn't eat anything else. So, during this month, Senju Jingchuan really lived a very comfortable life, except that he could hardly get out of bed or go out. Therefore, Senju Kagawa, who was able to get out of bed with great difficulty, was extremely happy. He could finally have fun. However, his first time to have fun was not in the territory of the Senju clan. Little Kagamikawa, have you felt particularly bored this month? Senju Hashirama suddenly approached Senju Kagamikawa with a sly look and asked a soul-searching question. Senju Kagamikawa stared with a pair of dead fish eyes, chewed the kanpieto in his mouth, and then looked at Senju Hashirama speechlessly. When Senju Hashirama was about to become depressed, Senju Kagawa finally answered. Yeah, I'm bored. So bored that I'm about to grow mushrooms. Isn't this obvious? No one would find it fun to lie in bed for a month to recover from an injury, even if Grandma Neko brought him some new and interesting toys for children. Senju Hashirama obviously didn't notice Senju Kagawa's speechless mood. His already bright eyes became even brighter, as if they were glowing. He said, Xiao Jingchuan, I'll take you to an interesting place. Senju Kagamikawa believed it, and he couldn't wait to follow Senju Hashirama to sneak out of the clan territory and head to the interesting place that Senju Hashirama mentioned. The air here is turbid, the sounds are noisy, and the people are bustling. It is indeed a lively and pleasant place where people will not feel bored. But is this place really suitable for people who have just recovered from a serious illness? For the first time in his life, Senju Kagamikawa began to doubt whether his elder brother, Senju Hashirama, was trying to murder him. Don't worry, Kagamikawa, don't worry, brother is already an adult, you can play. Senju Hashirama obviously didn't understand what Kagomikawa was worried about. Kagomikawa can also try it later, it's fun. Senju Kagawa had a helpless look on his face, and he stared at Senju Hashirama, who was having fun with his dead fish eyes. Okay, he should have known that Senju Hashirama is sometimes so unreliable. Come on, guess the size. Buy it and leave it, buy it and leave it. Big big big. This was the voice of Senju Hashirama, which could be heard very penetratingly by Senju Kagawa even in such a noisy place. That's right, the place that Hashirama Senju said he wanted to bring Senju Kagawa to so that he wouldn't be bored was the casino. Senju Jingchuan looked around the casino and found several familiar faces. They were of different ages, they were all thousand-hand ninjas that Senju Jingchuan had seen in his clan territory. Ah, there were even a few children who looked the same age as Senju Jingchuan. Senju Jingchuan had seen them on the training ground in the clan's territory. This is really gambling in a group. Senju Jingchuan couldn't help but start thinking about the laws of the country he lived in his previous life. And now, those children followed the older Senju ninjas beside them. Yes, they were the unlucky ones who were brought here to gamble by their unreliable brothers. The Senju ninjas beside those kids were placing bets as excitedly as Senju Hashirama beside Senju Kagawa, and judging by their expressions they were frustrated when the bets were first placed, but quickly became excited. It was obvious that they were both bad at gambling and loved to gamble. At this point, the result of this round of betting by Senju Hashirama came out. That's right, Senju Hashirama lost again. So, the ninjas of the Senju clan. Do you all have a gambling addiction? What a badass and playful guy. Senju Jingchuan couldn't help but complain in his heart. However, Senju Kagomikawa has not yet discovered that his second brother, Senju Tobirama, is also a gambler. Could it be that Senju Tobirama actually has a gambling addiction, but Senju Kagomikawa has never discovered it? Senju Kagomikawa couldn't help but think about the serious look on Senju Tobirama's face when he placed his bets. Then I couldn't help but feel a chill all over my body. And now, Hashirama Senju has basically lost all his money. The people in the casino obviously regarded Hashirama Senju as a big, fat sheep. They were very much looking forward to him placing a bet, and their eyes were almost glowing green as they stared at Hashirama Senju. Brother Hashirama, you are really like a sheep among a pack of wolves. Senju Kagomikawa couldn't help but secretly laugh at him in his heart. Senju Kagomikawa silently watched as Senju Hashirama's purse went from full to empty. He held the purse with a few copper coins left, smiled awkwardly, and asked Jingchuan. Xiao Jingchuan, do you want to give it a try? Ah, those few copper coins, if you want to gamble, you might have to put in some of Senju Jingchuan's own money. Brother, are you really my brother? Senju Kagawa couldn't help but ask this soul-searching question. Chapter 39, The Repentant Hand. Yes, Senju Jingchuan has his own savings. Although he is only 5 years old now, the mission he took out at that time did not come with mission money. And because it was an escort mission for nobles, the mission money that Senju Jingchuan received was actually quite a bit after deducting his share. Looking at Hashirama Senju's eager and expectant eyes, Senju Kagomikawa sighed, then took out his own small treasury. In the envious, jealous, and hateful eyes of Hashirama Senju, he was also ready to place a round of bets. However, it turns out that Senju Kagomikawa is not as high as the betting table. Ah, this is such an embarrassing and sad fact. Senju Kagawa had no idea what was happening on the surface. Little brat, move aside and don't block the way. A man who was placing bets pushed Senju Jingchuan away, obviously thinking he was in the way. Dwarf! The system suddenly made a mocking sound. Senju Jingchuan felt extremely ashamed after hearing the system's mocking voice, and 2 blushes slowly appeared on his fair little face. Sure enough, it wasn't Xianxiao Jingchuan's illusion. Why was this system becoming more and more lively? Senju Hashirama picked up Kagomikawa so that he could see the situation on the table more clearly. Because of anger, Senju Kagomikawa really wanted to prove himself through the bet, so he placed the bet angrily. Such a young child is also playing gambling. This parent is really unreliable. Looking at that watermelon-headed guy, he doesn't seem to be reliable. Hearing the discussions around him, Senju Hashirama couldn't help but reflect on himself bringing his younger brother, who had just recovered from a serious illness, to a place like a casino where all kinds of people mixed together seemed, might, perhaps, not really reliable? Then comes the exciting part. The result was unexpected. Thousand Hands Mirror River. The bet was won. Wow, oh wow, Senju Hashirama shouted happily. He looked at Senju Kagami River curiously, as if he was looking at something strange. Xiao Jingchuan, you are so amazing. Senju Jingchuan puffed out his chest proudly. Although he is short now, he knows how to gamble. That's right, in his previous life, Senju Kagamikawa had worked in a casino due to lack of money, and he was quite good at guessing the size of numbers, completely different from Senju Hashirama, who was a fat sheep who was both a gambler and a bad gambler. Then Senju Jingchuan became a little addicted. He gambled more and more, and won bigger and bigger. People around him also flocked to the gambling table, almost surrounding the place without any movement. The people around kept shouting in surprise. They didn't expect that Senju Jingchuan, a 5-year-old boy, could be so powerful. Those Senju ninjas that Senju Kagawa had seen in the Senju clan's territory also looked at Senju Kagawa with shining eyes, as if they wished he was their own younger brother. Ah, it seems that most of the Senju people are both incompetent and love to play. Senju Jingchuan thought. However, Senju Kagamikawa did not gamble too much. He just won back all the money that Senju Hashirama had lost before, and then won a small sum again. Hehe Kagamikawa, how come you are so powerful? Please teach me, your big brother Senju Hashirama asked Senju Kagamikawa curiously. Senju Kagamikawa had gambled enough by now, so he asked Senju Hashirama to collect the money and leave the casino. After hearing what Senju Hashirama said, he thought for a while and then said. Ah, well. It's just, this, that, and this, and then this. Do you understand, Hashirama-san? Senju Hashirama had a petrified expression on his face, staring blankly at Senju Kagamikawa. All the emotions in his eyes were combined into one sentence: I don't understand, smekta. Although he won a few times, the owner of the casino obviously saw that Senju Kagawa and Senju Hashirama were ninjas, so he didn't dare to provoke them. Moreover, Senju Kagawa didn't win too much. Therefore, there was no need for the casino to provoke two ninjas for such a small amount of money. So, Senju Kagamikawa and Senju Hashirama left the casino smoothly. Then, unfortunately, he met Tobirama Senju. Brother, why are you here? And why is my little brother out too? Senju Tobirama was wearing casual clothes and seemed to be just strolling around. Unexpectedly, he ran into Senju Kagawa and the other one. Senju Tobirama saw that Senju Hashirama was hugging Senju Kagawa, and Senju Kagawa's face was also rosy, and he was relieved and thought, although the eldest brother is not very reliable sometimes, at least he will protect the younger brother. And Senju Hashirama was thinking, this is over, why did I get bumped into by Tobirama again? Senju Tobirama was in a good mood and walked towards the two of them, then suddenly stopped and looked at Senju Hashirama sharply. He immediately saw the guilty look in Senju Hashirama's vague eyes. Senju Kagamikawa was still covering for Senju Hashirama at this time. He said, oh, Hashirama-san saw that I was bored, so he took me out for a stroll. Senju Tobirama obviously didn't quite believe it. He seemed to smell something, and his nose twitched a few times. He took a few breaths, then moved closer to Senju Hashirama and Senju Kagawa and sniffed a few more times. Now he was finally sure. Then, his face suddenly darkened, and he questioned Senju Hashirama in a stern tone. Brother, didn't I tell you not to come to the casino? Why are you here again? And bring Jingchuan with you. Senju Hashirama touched his nose guiltily, then muttered softly, Tobirama, you really have a dog nose. If I had known you were coming here, I would not have come. Who would have thought that I would be caught by you? Seeing that Hashirama Senju was still unrepentant, Tobirama Senju could no longer hold back. He gritted his teeth and spat out 2 words. Big brother. The crows in the tree were startled and flew up, cawed loudly, then circled in the air for a moment and flew away. And Senju Kagamikawa was standing under the shade of a tree, watching Senju Tobirama pulling Senju Hashirama's ear and scolding him the same old plot. Senju Hashirama was beaten again. This is really an old problem in the Senju clan leader's family. In the past, almost every 2 or 3 days, the Senju clan members would see the eldest son of the Senju clan leader, Senju Hashirama, being beaten by Senju Busama around the clan territory, with one running away and the other chasing. It seems that Senju Hashirama being beaten is one of the few parent-child activities in their family. Your brother doesn't understand, don't you understand either? Qian Shao Buddha's roar was so loud that it could almost be heard throughout the entire Qian Shao clan. How old are you? How dare you bring your brother to a place like a casino? Senju Jingchuan covered his ears with his hands, huddled in a small corner, trying his best to reduce his presence. And Senju Tobirama kept fanning the flames. That's right, big brother, you are too ignorant. It's not just the younger brother, I also saw several Senju children. Really, why do they bring their younger brothers and sisters to the casino one by one? And Senju Hashirama was sitting down in front of Senju Buddha, confessing his mistakes with tears and snot. Yes, father, it's all my fault. How could I bring such a little Jingchuan to the casino? Damn it! Senju Kagawa stood aside, watching the scene silently, hoping that the fire would not burn him. Chapter 40, The King of Children. Let's not talk about how severely Senju Hashirama, who secretly took Senju Kagawa to the casino that night, was punished. In short, after that day, Senju Fusuma once again issued an order to the Senju clan to prohibit gambling. And Senju Jingchuan is now enjoying all kinds of care from his tribesmen very happily. On the battlefield, Senju Kagamikawa acted as a medical ninja in the rear to treat the wounded, helping the Senju clan's ninjas to improve their survival rate on the battlefield, allowing the Senju clan to suppress the Uchiha clan in the war this time. Senju Fujian was almost grinning from ear to ear, and he wished that the whole world would know that this time, he, Senju Fujian, had defeated Uchiha Tajima. Of course, treating the wounded also brought many benefits to Senju Jingchuan. First of all, Senju Kagamikawa obtained a large amount of stick value and healing experience value. Secondly, Senju Kagamikawa's reputation in the Senju clan is getting better and better, and almost no one will mention the fact that he was once regarded as a monster. Coupled with the outstanding style that Senju Jingchuan had shown in the casino before he was able to strategize at the gambling table and win a lot of money, this made the gambling-addicted Senju people very popular with him. Moreover, Senju Kagamikawa is so delicate and beautiful, just like a white jade doll, so cute. Even the Uchiha clan next door may not have many children who are prettier than Senju Kagamikawa, and people just happen to love all beautiful things. Therefore, Senju Kagamikawa is now like a mascot in the Senju clan. He has grandparents who are lucky enough to live to their 50s or 60s who dote on him, he has young and middle-aged ninjas who go to the battlefield and love him because of his healing skills, and he has a group of children who look up to him as their big brother. Yes, Senju Kagamikawa is now doing quite well among the younger generation of the Senju clan, and the reason for this can be traced back to that day. At that time, Senju Kagawa was checking the growth of the crops he planted at the concentrated farmland. Those days were the hottest days of the summer, especially at noon when the temperature gradually rose. Senju Jingchuan was working alone in the fields, his face was sunburned red. He wiped the sweat off his forehead, stood up straight, and rubbed his sore waist and shoulders. Looking at the large area of land still covered with weeds, he couldn't help but feel troubled. For a 5-year-old body, such high-intensity labor is still a bit difficult. Even though Senju Jingchuan had been working for several hours, he had only cleaned up a small part, which was extremely inefficient. Too tired. Senju Jingchuan just sat on the ground, put his hands on his hips, and complained breathlessly. Xiao Jingchuan! It's time for lunch, why are you sitting there? A tall man saw Senju Jingchuan sitting in the farmland and walked over. Senju Jingchuan narrowed his eyes, put his hand on his forehead to block the sun, and finally saw the man who was shouting at him in the distance. He is Senju Muke, the cousin of Senju Momika. Senju Kagawa can often see him next to Senju Butsukan, and has also taken a lot of sticky points from him. I'm pulling weeds. Senju Kagawa put his hands on both sides of his mouth in a trumpet shape and shouted to Senju Muiai. Pulling out weeds? So you are clearing weeds. But what are you planting in this field? Why have I never seen such seedlings? At this time, Senju Muiai had already walked closer, observed the potato field where Senju Kagawa was, and asked in confusion. This field is full of potatoes, a crop that can produce 5,000 tons per mu. Potatoes can be steamed, fried, or boiled. Senju Kagawa explained to Senju Muiai with a look of contempt as if to say, you don't even know this. As a potato alien, Senju Jingchuan couldn't help swallowing when he thought of the various potatoes he had eaten in his previous life. Senju Muiai showed a strange look, obviously not believing what Senju Jingchuan said, thinking that he was just a child talking nonsense, and said, I have never heard of a crop that can produce 5,000 per acre. But then he grinned and encouraged Senju Kagamikawa, come on, Kagamikawa. If we could really have potatoes that yield 5,000 per acre, we would have fewer missions to complete, ha 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 ha. I will. You can enjoy it this fall. Now that he has made such a boast, Senju Jingchuan has no reason to give up. But these fields are too big, what should we do? During those days, there were more tasks in the clan. Hashirama Senju and Tobirama Senju were almost always out on missions. There were not many adult ninjas in the clan, and Kagamikawa Senju had no way to find other people to help. So, Senju Kagamikawa told a few Senju little radish heads who were about his age that he wanted to go farming. The little ninjas who had never farmed before were very curious about farming, so they went to the farmland collection area together. Of course, after coming here, some little ninjas didn't understand why Senju Kagamikawa did this. Kamigawa-kun, why do you want to farm? Senju Maiwako asked Senju Kagawa in confusion. Maiwako Senju is 2 years older than Kagamikawa. Because she is good-looking and trains hard, most boys of the same age have a good impression of her. Let me think. Once these crops are harvested, our parents, brothers and sisters won't have to do the mission. Senju Jingchuan tried his best to choose an explanation that even a child could understand. Senju Maiwako's eyes suddenly became bright. It was obvious that Senju Kagamikawa's explanation had successfully seduced her. Moreover, many children around laughed happily. At this time, a boy next to Senju Maiwako, Senju Yu, also said disdainfully, as a future ninja, Senju Kagamikawa is actually farming here. How can you be worthy of being the son of the clan leader? Don't be fooled by Senju Kagawa. These crops can't be grown at all. Senju Yuya shouted loudly. Several boys around also started whispering. My father used to farm. It was very tiring, but the food was not enough for him to eat alone. Yes, yes. I heard that this is the reason why the Senju clan chose to go out and take on missions. Did Jingchuan really lie to us? Hearing the children around him starting to question Senju Kagamikawa, the boy couldn't help but smile smugly. Kamigawa-kun is not such a person. I believe in Kagawa-kun. Senju Maiwako supported Senju Kagawa against all odds. Seeing that the girl he liked firmly believed in Kagamikawa, Senju Yuya's cheeks turned red with anger, and then he said loudly to Kagamikawa. I'm their boss. If you want us to help you, you have to beat me. Senju Kagamikawa looked at Senju Yuya with some amusement. He could see through the little thoughts of the boy in front of him. He just wanted to show himself in front of the girl he liked. Senju Kagamikawa accepted Senju Yuya's challenge. The result is, the water jutsu that Yuya Senju usually boasted of in front of the children turned into a pool of stagnant water when it encountered the Senju Kagamai River. Water release, water dragon bullet technique. A small water dragon the size of 2 adult man's fists was spit out by Senju Yuya. Although the water dragon was small, it was very fast and rushed to the front of Senju Kagawa in the blink of an eye. But when the water dragon approached Senju Kagawa, it was burned into steam by the flames on Senju Kagawa's body, and even Senju Kagawa's clothes were not wet. Seeing this funny scene, the other children couldn't help but burst into laughter. Senju Yuya broke through the defense instantly, took out the kunai from his waist and stabbed Senju Kagawa. Senju Kagamikawa bent backwards to avoid the stabbing kunai, and with the height of a 5-year-old boy, he nimbly went around Senju Yuya's back and kicked him lightly. Senju Yuya fell face first to the ground and cried out in pain. From then on, Senju Jingchuan became famous. In one battle he became famous among the children and successfully got the children to help him pull out weeds. Ever since the battle between Senju Kagawa Senju and Senju Yuya, Senju Kagawa has become the king of children of the Senju ninja clan. In addition, after the children spread the news, the adults of the Senju clan also learned about the so-called potatoes that yielded 5,000 per mu, but they just thought that Senju Kagamikawa was exaggerating and treated the matter as a joke. Chapter 41. Healing skills also have dangers? A few days later, Tobirama Senju and Hashirama Senju returned from their mission, and Kagamigawa Senju resumed his previous training. Because in the previous battle with Uchiha, Senju Kagawa was easily deceived by the one Megatama Sharingan illusion, Senju Tobirama specially made a plan to deal with the illusion for Senju Kagawa. The most important part of this plan is chakra. Fortunately, after using Please Don't Die, Senju Kagamikawa found that he could actually absorb chakra. Although the amount of chakra that could be absorbed was very small, at least Senju Kagamikawa now had the possibility of using ninjutsu. As for why Senju Kagamikawa was unable to use chakra before, Senju Tobirama gave a reasonable explanation. As a future scientist in reserve, Tobirama Senju's talent in research has already begun to take shape. When Kagamikawa Senju was unable to absorb chakra, Tobirama Senju took some of Kagamikawa Senju's cells for experiments. Now, Tobirama Senju has taken some of Kagamikawa's cells. By comparing the two cells, Senju Tobirama finally discovered the problem. Previously, the metabolism rate of Senju Kagamikawa's cells was too fast, and the cells were usually metabolized before they absorbed enough chakra. This cycle continued, and those cells containing chakra were either metabolized or blocked by cells that did not produce chakra. Therefore, the chakra pathway of the Senju Kagami River is completely blocked. The reason why Senju Kagamikawa is able to use chakra now is naturally because his cell metabolism rate has returned to normal. When talking about research, Senju Tobirama's red eyes became sparkling and the corners of his mouth unconsciously curled up into a smile. It can be seen that Senju Tobirama likes scientific research very much. However, I have not yet figured out the reason for the change in your cell metabolic rate. Senju Tobirama sighed. He has been troubled by this matter for several days. When Senju Jingchuan heard this, he couldn't help but think about the changes in himself before and after the injury. Before being injured, Senju Kagawa's body would usually perform healing magic on its own, but after using Please Don't Die, Senju Kagawa did not use healing magic on the existing wounds, and naturally stopped using healing magic on the entire body. Senju Kagamikawa told Senju Tobirama this conjecture. Both Tobirama Senju and Hashirama Senju knew that he had not been able to use chakra before, so the medical ninjutsu that Senju Kagawa used in the past could only be Senju Kagawa's unique talent, a skill that does not require chakra support. However, Hashirama Senju and Tobirama Senju did not make the matter public. They believed in their younger brother and did not want their words to become a sharp blade that hurt him. So, Senju Tobirama pondered for a moment and quickly accepted this explanation. In that case, it is very likely related to your healing skills. Your healing technique is different from the general palm magic. Most palm magic focuses on stopping bleeding and transferring lost vitality to the wound through chakra. Only a small part of it focuses on the same thing as your healing technique, stimulating cell division and regeneration. However, medical ninjas generally don't perform medical ninjutsu in their bodies all day long. Therefore, even those ninjas who focus on stimulating cell regeneration will not have their own cells metabolized too quickly. As soon as Senju Kagamikawa heard Tobirama's explanation, he understood that it was his own fault that he couldn't use chakra. Senju Tobirama thought for a moment, then his face became serious. He asked Senju Kagawa, "Kamigawa, do you know that too fast cell metabolism is not a good thing?" Senju Kagawa nodded. Then Senju Tobirama continued. Rapid cell metabolism can provide more physical energy, but the number of cell metabolisms in each person's body is limited, and each cell metabolism will consume your original vitality. Senju Jingchuan was shocked when he heard this. It turned out that he had been using the healing technique purely for the sake of seeking death. When Senju Tobirama saw Senju Kagawa's face turn pale, he knew that he had heard it. He slowed down his tone and continued. Although the vitality of the Senju clan is stronger than that of other ninja clans, but too fast cell metabolism is not a long-term solution. Do you understand? Senju Jingchuan nodded hurriedly. He now realized how suicidal he had been in the past. In this Warring States period, when the average life expectancy is 30 years, Senju Kagamikawa actually dares to create his own vitality in this way. Doesn't he think he has lived too long? If Senju Jingchuan continued to destroy his vitality like this, he might not die on the battlefield, but die from his own healing skills. Senju Jingchuan's face is still pale, and he feels a little scared when he thinks that he almost killed himself. It has to be Brother Tobirama. If it weren't for him, I probably wouldn't know the cause of death until I die. So if Senju Jingchuan stops using healing magic, will the lifespan of the patch value conversion increase? Senju Kagawa decided to give it a try. Sure enough, just as Senju Tobirama said, after he stopped using healing techniques, his life conversion value did increase. As expected, everything is excessive or inadequate. Senju Jingchuan couldn't help but sigh. After figuring out the chakra of Senju Kagawa, Senju Tobirama began to develop a chakra training plan for Senju Kagawa. The first thing is to test the chakra properties of Senju Kagawa. Senju Tobirama handed Senju Kagamakuwa a piece of grey paper. Senju Jingchuan had never seen such paper before. He asked in confusion. "Brother Tobirama, what is this?" Senju Tobirama explained. "This is a chakra test paper. You input chakra into the paper and it will detect your chakra attributes." As Senju Tobirama spoke, he took out another chakra test paper and injected chakra into it. Then, the chakra test paper became wet and water dripped down. Senju Kagawa carefully transferred the chakra to his fingertips and then input it into the paper. The next second, a corner of the paper was wet, but it was not as wet as Senju Tobirama's. Senju Kagamakuwa twisted the wet corner of the paper with his fingertips and asked in confusion. "Why is only one corner of this chakra test paper wet? It's completely different from Tobirama-san's." Senju Tobirama smiled and stroked Kagamakuwa's white-haired head, explaining. "That's because you have too little chakra. If you had the same amount of chakra as I do, the chakra test paper would be soaked. But, you have the same water attribute as me, that makes it easier. From now on, leave your chakra training to me." Senju Tobirama thought for a moment and said, "So, I still need to train your ability to break illusions first." When Senju Kagamakuwa saw Senju Tobirama thinking seriously, he knew that his future chakra training would not be easy. Qian Shao Jingchuan wanted to cry but had no tears. Chapter 42, Izuna loves eating fish? Well. It hurts. Brother Tobirama, can't you be gentler? Senju Kagamakuwa covered his head which was covered with a big bump and complained to Senju Tobirama. Kinju Jingchuan blinked his big almond eyes, his fair and delicate face was full of grievances, looking very pitiful. The sunlight shone on his white hair, reflecting white light. Senju Tobirama was slightly dazed. Senju Kagamakuwa is the one who looks most like Senju Haruko among the brothers. Now that Senju Kagamakuwa's hair has grown longer, his delicate little face looks even more androgynous, and it is difficult to tell his gender. Senju Tobirama couldn't help but miss Senju Haruko in his heart, but then he shook his head. "Kamigawa, you are too weak. You can't even break the lowest level illusion," Senju Tobirama said seriously. When Senju Kagamakuwa saw that his acting coquettishly was useless, he curled his lips, stopped talking, and continued to accept training from Senju Tobirama. What Senju Tobirama said was right. Senju Kagawa's talent in illusion was indeed not as high as his talent in physical skills. He had been training for several days, but Senju Kagawa still couldn't avoid even the most basic illusions and always fell into Senju Tobirama's traps. However, after several days of training with Senju Tobirama, Senju Kagawa's patience with illusions became stronger and stronger, and the time he was controlled by illusions became shorter and shorter. But you have to know that in the battlefield of ninja, every second is precious, and some ninjas may be killed in just that 1 second. Therefore, Senju Kagawa's illusion technique needs to be practiced again. In addition to illusions, Tobirama Senju has also been teaching Kagawa Senju how to use chakra these days. Ever since he stopped the autonomous healing technique, the amount of chakra of Senju Kagamakuwa has increased. Although it is still not as much as other Senju ninjas of the same age, it is at least enough for him to use most of the ninjutsu. But the training of ninjutsu does not rely solely on the amount of chakra. Senju Kagawa also needs to train his hand seal speed and chakra stability. Senju Kagamakuwa has been troubled by the hand seals of ninjutsu these days. He really doesn't understand why there are so many steps in making ninja hand seals, so many seals to remember, and different ninjutsu have different orders of hand seals. Senshao Jingchuan's diligence in memorizing seal techniques during this period is comparable to his frantic memorization of knowledge points before the college entrance examination in his previous life. Senju Jingchuan has been working day and night for a while. He has no idea how many bumps on his head he has gotten from being hit by Senju Tobirama. His fingers are almost knotted from practicing hand seals, and his whole body is sore. As for the stability of chakra, Senju Tobirama asked him to try walking on trees and water. On this day, Senju Tobirama went out on a mission again, and Senju Kagamakuwa finally got a vacation. As for why Senju Kagamakuwa is not on a mission now, it is of course because there are few escort missions recently. At his age, Senju Kagamakuwa can only accept escort missions, but most of these missions have been taken by ninjas who are 1 or 2 years older than Senju Kagamikawa, so it is not Senju Kagamikawa's turn. Senju Jingchuan, who finally had a few days' rest, first went to observe the crops he planted. Ever since he knew that his healing technique could also stimulate cell metabolism and regeneration, an idea came to Senju Kagamikawa's mind. If a plant seedling is cured, will it grow faster? And today, Senju Jingchuan finally has time to try it. Senju Jingchuan covered the healing technique in the palm of his hand and carefully approached a potato seedling that was growing well. The potato sprouts were cured. Senju Jingchuan held his breath and watched its changes quietly. Just as Senju Jingchuan had expected, the potato seedling did grow a bit, but only a little bit and then stopped growing. Senju Kagamikawa decided to try again the next day. The next day, the potato sprouts grew taller again under the effect of the healing magic. It seems that the healing technique is indeed effective on potato seedlings, but I don't know what the potatoes that eventually grow will look like. Senju Jingchuan decided to wait and see. In any case, the fact that healing magic can make plant seedlings grow is a pretty big discovery. Senju Kagami River came to Nanga River again, the border area between the Senju and Uchiha clans. It is worth mentioning that the place where Senju Kagami River came this time is where he often comes to fish, not where Hashirama often dates with Madara. This time he came here to fish again, and wanted to catch some pheasants, wild rabbits, and other animals to take back to raise. There was no other way. Qian Xiao Jingchuan was a meat lover, and he really couldn't stand the days of eating vegetarian food every other day. Of course, after doing all this, Senju Jingchuan will also practice treading water. Senju Jingchuan quickly aimed at several fish and caught them skillfully and quickly. Very good, my skills haven't deteriorated yet. Senju Kagawa thought happily. Senju Jingchuan put all the fish into the big bucket he brought, then formed seals with his hands and used a small water technique to pour some water into the bucket to ensure the survival of the fish. After catching the fish, Senju Kagawa put the bucket on the shore. Then he looked at the water and decided to start practicing treading water. Senju Jingchuan warmed up first, then carefully gathered the chakra in his body to the soles of his feet and slowly stepped onto the water. When one foot stepped on the water, Senju Jingchuan felt a little strange. It was no different from stepping on the ground. He sighed in his heart that chakra was really a magical power system. Success! Senju Kagawa slowly put his other foot on the water. It was a little shaky at first, but he soon stood firm. Then Senju Kagawa tried to walk on the water, and successfully took 1 step, 2 steps. Then, Senju Jingchuan felt that his feet were suspended in the air and he fell into the water with a splash. Ahem! Bah! Senju Jingchuan flapped his hands in panic, then floated on the water and spit out the water that he choked on because he didn't have time to react. His white medium-length hair was wet and stuck together, with a few strands of bangs stuck to his face. His fair face was a little red because he choked on the water, and he looked really embarrassed. Puff! Senju Jingchuan suddenly heard a stifled laugh coming from the shore. He looked up and saw someone he didn't expect. Izuna, the boy who was suspected to be from the Uchiha clan. Senju Kagawa was a little surprised. He had come to Nanga River to fish many times before, but he had never met Izuna. Why today? However, Izuna's face was a little pale at this time, and she didn't look as healthy as before. Although her skin was still white, it was not white with a rosy glow. When Senju Kagamikawa saw that it was Izuna, he felt embarrassed after being surprised. Unexpectedly, the scene of him falling into the water was seen by someone. Senju Jingchuan now felt ashamed and embarrassed. Senju Jingchuan swam slowly to the shore and then stood up by supporting himself on the ground. Izuna, why are you here? I haven't seen you for a long time. Senju Kagamikawa put aside his previous shame and tried to divert Izuna's attention to something else by changing the subject. When Izuna heard Senju Kagamikawa ask him this, his attention was diverted for a moment. He hesitated for a long time, then lowered his eyelashes and replied. Come and relax. Senju Kagamikawa saw Izuna's performance and knew something was wrong. But looking at Izuna's appearance, she was indeed in a bad mood, and maybe relaxing was not an excuse to perfunctorily deal with him. After saying this, Izuna fell silent. He stared at the water in a daze, not knowing what he was thinking about. Senju Kagamikawa saw that Izuna was in a bad mood and felt uncomfortable for some reason. He was used to seeing Izuna being arrogant and energetic, not the silent and sad one in front of him. Senju Kagamikawa moved a little closer, but maintained a suitable and safe distance. His body was still covered in water, and he didn't want to get Izuna wet. He originally just wanted to accompany Izuna silently, hoping to ease his unhappiness. But as soon as he got close to Izuna, Senju Kagawa smelled a faint smell of blood, which was very faint, but Senju Kagawa was very familiar with it, so he could smell it immediately. Qian Shao Jingchuan's expression changed, and he asked worriedly. Izuna, are you hurt? Izuna looked up in surprise, perhaps because she didn't expect he could smell it, or perhaps because she didn't expect Senju Kagawa to care about him so much. Senju Kagamikawa doesn't care what Izuna thinks. To him, Izuna is his first friend after coming to the other world. Although they have only met a few times, he likes Izuna, who is proud and capable, determined and persevering, especially because Izuna's appearance is in line with Senju Kagamikawa's aesthetic. Senju Kagawa raised his hands and covered them with healing magic. His hands were emitting a faint healing green light. Izuna looked at Senju Kagawa's hands in surprise and was horrified. He didn't expect Kagawa to know medical ninjutsu. Senju Jingchuan smiled and asked. Izuna, let me help you heal. Then, as if he was afraid that Izuna wouldn't believe him, he added, my medical ninjutsu is very powerful. Izuna hesitated for a moment, then decided to believe him. It was because he had a good impression of Kagamikawa Senju. After spending a few times with him, he felt that Kagamikawa Senju was a kind-hearted child who would not hurt him. Moreover, even if Kagamikawa Senju wanted to hurt him, he was sure that he could react. So, Izuna took off her shirt, revealing her upper body wrapped in thick bandages. Even with thick bandages wrapped around her, you can see that Izuna has a nice back, a lean type, with nice muscles on her arms that don't look bloated, beautiful butterfly bones on her back, and a very straight spine. He untied the bandage, and when he pulled off the bottom layer of bandage, his flesh stuck to the rough bandage, causing him to groan and frown. The wound was very long and deep, and it was obviously a knife wound, extending from Izuna's right shoulder to his left lower back. Izuna's skin was very white, so white that it was blinding, so the wound was even more conspicuous and looked extremely horrible. Senju Kagawa felt a little sorry that such a beautiful back was cut diagonally, but he was also glad that it was just a cut, otherwise Izuna might have died on the spot. He sighed in his heart that this ninja world is truly a cannibalistic world. The area around the wound was slightly red, and I didn't know if it was because the wound was a little inflamed or because it was rubbed by the rough bandage. Senju Kagamikawa first used flame to evaporate the water on his hands, and then lightly covered Izuna's wound, slowly performing the healing technique from the upper right to the lower left. Izuna's back was trembling slightly, and it was not known whether it was because of the pain in the wound or because of nervousness. In any case, it was impossible that it was because of fear of the cold. The temperature of 37 or 38 degrees was burning on the skin. Senju Kagamikawa quickly healed the wound on Izuna's back. Not even a scar was left, and her beautiful back was revealed. Senju Jingchuan was satisfied now. Izuna put her clothes back on and thanked Senju Kagamikawa. He suppressed the shock in his heart. He didn't expect Senju Kagamikawa's medical ninjutsu to be so powerful. But Izuna soon said goodbye, and before leaving, Senju Kagamikawa gave him a few fish, saying that he could take them back and make soup to nourish his body. Izuna was a little stunned, but he still accepted the fish and thanked him very solemnly. At the same time the next day, Senju Jingchuan was still catching fish here, and then practicing treading water after catching the fish. As expected, Senju Jingchuan still couldn't last a few steps this time. He returned to shore and wrung the water out of his clothes. Hello, your name is Jingchuan, right? A familiar voice suddenly came from the other side. Senju Kagamikawa looked up and saw it was Izuna. He was a little surprised. He didn't expect Izuna to come today. However, Senju Kagamikawa quickly suppressed his surprise. He smiled and replied, "Yes, I am Kagamikawa. What can I do for you, Izuna?" Izuna's face on the other side was a little red. I wonder if it was because of the hot weather. Izuna covered the solace of his feet with chakra, then walked over on the water, quickly and steadily. When Senju Kagawa saw Izuna treading water so steadily, he couldn't help but feel envious. He was not as fast or steady in treading water as Izuna, and he would basically fall into the water after taking every 2 steps. Izuna came over quickly. He stood in front of Senju Kagawa, his face slightly red. he asked. Can you teach me how to catch and grill fish? In return, I'll teach you how to tread water. Quan Nai was a little embarrassed, his eyes wandering. In fact, it was not that he liked eating fish that much, but recently several young people in the clan were injured in the battlefield, and he wanted to give them more nourishment. Those juniors have always admired Madara, and Madara has recently been a little worried about the physical condition of those juniors. As a brother Khan, Izuna is naturally concerned about those juniors. In addition, he actually wanted to repay Senju Jingchuan for treating his wounds that day, but he used teaching him how to catch fish as an excuse. Anyway, I'm just teaching him to tread water, which is just a basic ninja operation, and it doesn't involve family ninjutsu or something like that. Senju Jingchuan was confused and his eyes turned into small dots. He thought Izuna was going to say something big, but he actually wanted to teach him how to catch and grill fish. He knew the reason as soon as he thought about it. Senju Kagamikawa smiled in his heart. Izuna was indeed a tsundere and cute child. If you think about it carefully, catching fish is not difficult, but it does require skills. Izuna doesn't look like someone who can catch fish. Senju Jingchuan's thoughts flowed, and he said happily. Of course. It's not a big deal. Thus, Izuna and Kagamikawa began their joyful teaching and learning. Chapter 43, Gentle Hands. This is the countless times that Senju Jingchuan has fallen into the water. When Izuna saw Senju Kagamikawa fall into the water again on the shore, she couldn't help but sigh. This child is really incorrigible. It's not that he didn't want to teach Senju Jingchuan well. He even delayed his daily training a lot in order to teach Senju Jingchuan. He had already told Senju Jingchuan the trick of treading water, but he still couldn't keep steady, although he had made great progress compared to the beginning. Since that day when Senju Kagawa and Izuna exchanged the condition of helping each other, Senju Kagawa quickly taught Izuna the skills of catching fish, and also taught him many ways to cook fish. And Izuna did not disappoint her teacher Kagamikawa Senju. She learned everything very quickly and soon mastered many ways to cook fish. Then, Izuna began the task of teaching Senju Kagamikawa. Result. It has been the third day of teaching Senju Jingchuan how to tread water, but Senju Jingchuan still cannot learn the fine control of chakra. Senju Jingchuan swam to the shore, spit out the water in his mouth and shook his hair to get rid of the water. Then he climbed up the shore with his hands and lay down flat on his back. Call. I'm so tired. Why is it so hard to tread water? Senju Kagawa complained while panting. Izuna also didn't understand why it was so difficult for Senju Kagamikawa to learn to tread water. He also sighed in his heart, because it only took him 2 days to learn it completely. Izuna could only try to convince herself maybe all of Senju Kagamikawa's talent points were added to medical ninjutsu. Senju Jingchuan did not use flames to evaporate the moisture from his body because there was really no need to do so. He would probably fall into the water again and get his clothes wet. Senju Jingchuan has begun to doubt himself. Is he really such a rubbish? Izuna was still frowning and thinking carefully about where the problem lay. When you need to control chakra finely, you need to use your mental strength, so you need to calm down, not be nervous, and not have any obsessions. In order to allow a certain amount of chakra to continuously gather at the soles of your feet, you must relax and focus your mind on the water. Hey, Kagamigawa-kun, are you sure you stayed relaxed when you were treading water? Izuna couldn't help but ask Senju Kagamigawa to confirm. Ah, yes, the only thing I was thinking about was treading water. Jingchuan replied. Senju Kagawa really didn't know what to do now. Why couldn't his chakra be continuously supplied to the soles of his feet? Izuna felt sorry for Senju Kagamikawa when he saw her lost look, so he comforted her. Don't worry. You can now walk to the middle of the river, which is much better than at the beginning. Maybe you can get it right with a little more practice. Senju Kagamikawa knew that Izuna was trying to comfort him, so he just sighed and said, I hope so. Senju Kagamikawa truly felt that Izuna was a very patient teacher. If he was teaching others how to tread water, not only would he have to stand outside in the 40-degree sun every day, but the students would also spend 3 days trying to learn it. Given Senju Kagawa's hot temper, he would probably be so angry that he would start cursing. Qian Shao Jingchuan has been training for an entire afternoon now. The sun has already set, dotting the clouds in the sky into a beautiful shade of yellow and orange. The temperature now is not as hot as it was at noon. Qian Shao Jingchuan is soaked through, but can still feel the cool breeze when the wind blows. Senshou Jingchuan shuddered and looked at the sky, realizing it was getting late. Senju Kagawa stood up, curled his eyes, smiled and said to Izuna. Izuna, it's almost time for dinner, you should go home first. I didn't expect to delay your entire afternoon, I'm so sorry. I'm so stupid, let me practice on my own for the rest of the time. Quana looked at the sky and realized that it was indeed getting late. If he didn't go back, he might be questioned by Brother Ban. After spending the past few days together, he already regarded Kagamikawa as a friend. If his father and brother knew about it, it might affect Kagamikawa. Izuna thought about it in her heart, then said goodbye to Senju Kagamikawa. Before leaving, he stopped and turned to Senju Kagawa and said, I have to go on a mission tomorrow. You don't have to wait for me tomorrow. Senju Kagamikawa was a little stunned. If Izuna was going on a mission, they might not see each other for several days. He finally smiled and gave his blessing to Izuna. Be careful on your journey. I wish you good luck in martial arts. Izuna smiled back at him and left. After Izuna left, Senju Kagamikawa caught a few more fish from the river, and then used flame to evaporate the water on his body before returning to the Senju clan's territory. When I got home, as expected, the house was empty again. However, according to past experience, Tobirama Senju and Hashirama Senju should be back tonight. Thinking this, Senju Jingchuan went to find some millet and vegetable leaves to feed the chickens and rabbits respectively. The pheasants and rabbits were both caught by Senju Jingchuan a few days ago. When Senju Jingchuan was feeding the chickens, he discovered that a wild hen had laid several eggs. Senju Jingchuan reached out to take it but was pecked a few times. Hiss, it hurts when a chicken pecks you. Senshou Jingchuan cursed with a smile. Master, if you try to eat someone else's child, they will definitely not want to give it to you. The ugly monster laughed at Qianshao Jingchuan in the flames. This egg is not fertilized, so no chick can hatch. Why is it so protective of its calf? Senshou Jingchuan muttered to himself as he caught a few big, fat worms to feed the pheasant. After eating the worms, the pheasant finally gave up a few eggs to Senshou Jingchuan. Senju Kagamikawa happily took the eggs to cook soup. The meal that Senju Jingchuan prepared tonight was still very rich, with vegetables, soup, fish, and mushroom rice. As a pure flower-growing family in his previous life, Senju Kagamikawa was used to eating a variety of vegetables and cooked food, so he seldom made snacks such as rice balls, except when time and materials did not permit. Just as Kagamikawa Senju had guessed, Hashirama Senju and Tobirama Senju did come back tonight. They came back shortly after Kagamikawa Senju finished cooking. As soon as Hashirama Senju stepped into the house, he smelled the aroma of rice that filled the room. The fragrance was so strong that it penetrated into his nose bit by bit, making him salivate. Senju Hashirama was almost drooling at the fragrance. Xiao Jingchuan, what delicious food did you make tonight? It smells so good. Senju Jingchuan ran out to greet the two people who had just returned from a mission. It could be seen that both of them were exhausted and had a hint of fatigue on their faces. There's mushroom rice that Hashirama-san likes to eat, there's fish that Tobirama-san likes to eat, and there's egg soup. Senju Kagamikawa said slowly, counting on his fingers. Senju Hashirama happily picked up Senju Kagawa and spun him around, laughing. Great! We have my favorite mushroom rice. Kagamai River is great. Hey, big brother, put me down quickly, I'm not a child anymore. Senju Kagamikawa couldn't help blushing when he saw Hashirama treating him like a child. At this time, Senju Tobirama came over and rescued Kagamikawa from Senju Hashirama's arms. Senju Tobirama rubbed Kagamikawa's head and smiled gently. Thank you for your hard work, little brother. Then Senju Hashirama and Senju Tobirama went into their respective rooms to change clothes, leaving Senju Kagawa alone standing there, grinning foolishly. Master, you are laughing so foolishly, the ugly monster laughed teasingly. How could that be? Senju Kagamikawa added, trying to cover up the truth, obviously, Tobirama-san is too gentle. After Hashirama Senju and Tobirama Senju changed their clothes, Senju Busama also came back, so they had dinner together. After dinner, Senju Kagamikawa told Senju Tobirama about the problems he had encountered recently when treading water. So, the next day, Senju Tobirama made Senju Kagamikawa step on water in front of him. With a plop, Senshou Jingchuan fell into the water after taking just a few steps. Senju Tobirama had been observing. He thought for a moment, and then suddenly an idea came to him. I found the reason. Chapter 44. Kagamakuwa Senju knew that Tobirama Senju was quite talented in studying ninjutsu and had a wide range of knowledge, but Kagamakuwa Senju didn't expect that Tobirama Senju could see where his problem was so quickly. After all, Tobirama Senju doesn't have the ability to see through things, so he can't see his chakra pathways. Therefore, in Senju Kagawa's heart, Senju Tobirama's identity as a scientist was greatly elevated by him. He couldn't wait to ask Senju Tobirama what the reason was, and didn't even care that he was still soaking in the water. In fact, Senju Tobirama was not that powerful. He just saw that the chakra under Kagawa's feet was interrupted in an unsteady manner. Combined with his previous judgment that Senju Kagawa was unable to use chakra, he understood where the problem lay. There was a shining light of confidence in Senju Tobirama's red eyes, and it was obvious that he was very confident in his guess he was worthy of being called the man covered in forbidden techniques in the future. Kamigawa, you can try to use flame to open another channel of chakra. In other words, it means not transporting chakra through one's own meridians and cells. Use flame to create another channel to ensure the stability of chakra. Senju Kagawa's control over flame is still perfect now. He hasn't worn the gloves that seal flame for a long time, but he can still control flames. Therefore, Senju Kagawa easily created a flame passage according to Senju Tobirama's suggestion. He channeled chakra through the flames to the soles of his feet and stepped onto the water. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. It worked. Senju Jingchuan successfully crossed the river and reached the other side. Senju Jingchuan jumped up happily, almost 3 feet high. He cheered and shouted, "Brother Tobirama, you are my god!" The birds were startled by the sound of Senju Kagami River and left the trees where they had originally roosted. They chirped and scattered, each flying to other places. Senju Tobirama clenched his fist and put it to his lips, coughed lightly twice, and signaled Senju Kagamakuwa to stop shouting. "Brother, you did a good job this time. But, maybe you could retract the flames and not expose them under your feet along with the chakra." Senju Tobirama made this suggestion. Just now, when Senju Kagawa was stepping on the water, the flames and chakra were wrapped around the soles of his feet. But when he passed through the water, the flames were not extinguished. Don't say it, although this scene is weird, it is a bit cool after watching it for a long time. Senju Kagamakuwa really likes the sight of flames coming out of his feet. He thinks it looks really cool, but... Qian Shao Jingchuan took a few steps back and saw 2 small footprints left on the grass on the shore by the flames on his feet. That's hard to judge. For a ninja, what he should do is to hide his tracks, but Senju Kagamakuwa exposed his position all of a sudden. It is hard to say whether the enemy will think he is provoking them. Thinking about it carefully, although this is cool, it doesn't seem suitable for appearing on the battlefield. Qian Shao Jingchuan silently put away the flames under his feet. He stepped on water again and returned to Senju Tobirama's side. These 2 times of treading water, Senju Kagawa was very steady. Although he didn't know the reason, it did not prevent Senju Kagawa from continuing to admire Senju Tobirama. On the way back, Senju Kagawa held Senju Tobirama's hand clingingly and praised him highly, making him feel embarrassed and his face turned red. In the evening, Senju Jingchuan was in a very good mood because he had solved a big problem that had been bothering him for several days, so he started cooking early. Senju Tobirama also helped Senju Kagawa while cooking tonight. By the way, Senju Tobirama can cook, and has a good control over the heat. After all, he is a ninja. But in their family, Senju Kagawa's cooking is the best. Senju Kagawa doesn't want to wrong his stomach, so he takes care of all 3 meals a day. Senju Tobirama and his companions originally didn't care much about what to eat for meals, but Senju Kagamakuwa's cooking skills were so good that over time they became picky eaters. Now if Senju Tobirama were asked to cook for himself, he might not be able to eat much. Thanks to the help of Senju Tobirama, Senju Kagamakuwa quickly prepared dinner, and it was still very sumptuous. Now the 2 of them were waiting for Senju Hashirama and Senju Busama to come home for dinner. Qian Shaofujian came back around 7 o'clock in the evening again today. He basically found a time to come back. But what is strange is that Senju Hashirama returned home a long time after Senju Busama, and he looked very embarrassed as if he had just had a fight with someone. His clothes were covered in dust, his exposed skin had some scratches, and his face looked a little tired. Senju Butsuma couldn't help but frown when he saw Senju Hashirama's dusty appearance. Since Tobirama Senju and Hashirama Senju just returned from their mission last night, Senju Butsuma did not force them to train today. This was equivalent to giving them a day off in disguise to have a good rest. Although it was midsummer and it got dark very late, it was almost dark when Hashirama Senju returned. Considering that Senju Hashirama left the house at dawn this morning, Senju Hashirama stayed outside for almost 14 hours. Senju Kagamigawa and Senju Tobirama were now very curious about what their eldest brother Senju Hashirama had been doing all day, and he seemed to be in a bad mood. Qian Shao Buddha had a cold face and asked in a cold tone, "Where did you go fooling around today? You're back so late." Senju Hashirama looked a little embarrassed and cast his eyes towards Senju Kagamigawa. Senju Kagawa reacted quickly. He smiled and ran to Senju Hashirama, took his hand, helped him out, then turned to Senju Fusuma and explained. "Father, Hashirama-san helped me farm today, please don't make things difficult for him. Hashirama-san is already very tired. I'll take Hashirama-san to change clothes first, you and Tobirama-san can eat first." Senju Kagamigawa pulled Senju Hashirama into the room, secretly glanced at Senju Bujian's expression, and saw that Senju Bujian didn't seem to want to pursue the matter any further, and he couldn't help but feel relieved. He closed the door, found some clean clothes and handed them to Senju Hashirama, then asked quietly. "Brother Hashirama, what did you do today? You came back so late." Fortunately, father didn't pursue it too much, otherwise. When facing the Senju Kagami River, Senju Hashirama no longer concealed his fatigue. He explained while changing his clothes. "I went to spar with Madara. He was injured, and I heard from him that he only has one younger brother left. He's not in a good mood. Senju Kagawa felt a lot heavier when he heard what Hashirama said. Now he understood why Hashirama looked unhappy. Maybe he was thinking about the deceased Kama and Itama. He only heard that there was a war between the Uchiha and other ninja clans recently. Now it seems that, as expected, the war has taken away many lives. Kamigawa, I want to build a village to protect you and Tobirama." Senju Hashirama looked a little fragile. He really didn't want to lose any more of his brothers. Senju Jingchuan bit his lip and did not answer. Peace is not that easy. However, he still slightly curved his eyebrows and smiled. "Brother Hashirama, you are too lame. The village is so unsophisticated. If you want to build something, then build a ninja country." After a while, Senju Kagamigawa and Senju Hashirama came out. At this time, Hashirama Senju had changed into a clean and tidy set of clothes, and his expression looked a lot more relaxed. While eating with relish, Hashirama Senju praised Kagamigawa Senju's cooking skills. Senju Kagamigawa smiled and asked Hashirama to eat slowly. The expression on Thousand-Handed Buddha's face was also very relaxed, and it was obvious that he no longer cared about what had just happened. However, Senju Tobirama carefully observed his elder brother and younger brother, rolled his eyes and showed a thoughtful expression. Chapter 45. You ninjas really know how to have fun. Recently, Senju Kagamigawa felt that his second brother Senju Tobirama was acting strangely, and he felt that the frequency of seeing Senju Tobirama had increased significantly. For example, every time he sneaked out of the clan to hunt, he would happen to meet Senju Tobirama who was also out. At first, Senju Kagamigawa thought that he had met Senju Tobirama by chance, but after meeting him many times, he felt something was wrong and couldn't help but start to doubt Senju Tobirama's motives. Strange, so strange. Senju Kagawa met Senju Tobirama again, but this time it was in the clan territory. Senju Jingchuan was observing the crops he planted in the concentrated farmland. All the crops grew surprisingly well. He didn't know if it was because they were produced by the system. After many experiments, Senju Kagawa discovered that potatoes that have been treated with the healing technique will indeed grow faster, but this growth is limited. After the potato seedlings grow to a certain size, they will no longer be able to grow. Maybe it has something to do with the number of cell divisions. Therefore, Senju Jingchuan has no way of knowing what this potato will look like in the end. He can only wait until the harvest to see. Water escape. Senju Kagamigawa used his learned water escape technique to accurately split many small water balls onto each crop, which then slowly flowed through the seedlings, soaked into the soil, and reached the roots. Clap clap. There was a burst of applause. Senju Kagawa turned around in surprise and found that it was Senju Tobirama. My dear brother, your chakra control has become more and more refined recently. But you can actually think of using water jutsu in such a place. Senju Tobirama folded his hands in front of his chest, touched his chin with his right fingers, and seemed to be thinking, I can only say that you are worthy of it, my dear brother. Senju Jingchuan felt a little embarrassed by his praise. That's right, for the extremely serious Senju Tobirama, this is already a compliment. Recently, Kagamikawa Senju has been extremely admiring of Tobirama Senju. When he heard him praising him, he instantly felt affirmed by his idol, so Kagamikawa Senju is in a very happy mood. However, Senju Kagawa quickly recovered. He looked Senju Tobirama up and down suspiciously, but couldn't see anything. Then Senju Kagamikawa asked Senju Tobirama to stand still, walked around him, looked at him carefully, and then faced Senju Tobirama. Senju Jingchuan still didn't say anything. He touched his chin with a serious expression. Senju Tobirama originally had a calm expression, but as Senju Kagamikawa looked at him for longer and longer, his expression became a little stiff. If it were in a comic, he would probably be drawn with a dark face and a cross on his forehead to represent anger. But Senju Tobirama still held back, perhaps because he did feel a little guilty about secretly following Senju Kagamikawa. What's wrong? I haven't said anything for a long time. Senju Tobirama couldn't help but ask. Senju Jingchuan shook his head, then nodded, but didn't say anything. When Senju Tobirama was getting a little impatient waiting, Senju Kagamikawa suddenly said. As expected, Tobirama-san is still very handsome. When Senju Tobirama felt a little relieved, Senju Kagawa changed the subject and said. But I always feel like you, Tobirama-san, have been secretly following me lately. Senju Tobirama flatly denied that he was following Senju Kagamikawa, and he insisted that it was a coincidence. However, Senju Jingchuan didn't care too much about this. After all, he didn't do anything wrong, so he gave up pursuing the matter. But soon, Senju Jingchuan discovered that things were not that simple. Perhaps, Tobirama-san actually wants to follow Hashirama-san. Senju Kagamikawa thought carefully. Senju Kagawa has been feeling more and more that something is wrong with Senju Tobirama these days. He thought carefully about what Tobirama Senju had been doing these past few days, and combined it with his own and Hashirama Senju's schedule. He discovered that his itinerary and that of Hashirama Senju actually overlapped to a great extent. The only difference is that Senju Kagamigawa went to the forest near Minamigagawa to hunt or to catch fish at the place where he often met Izuna, while Senju Hashirama went to Minamigagawa to date with Madara, no, to fight with him. In addition, there was a low pressure at home recently. Senju Furuma was in a bad mood these days, as if he was worried. He even called Senju Hashirama and Senju Tobirama into the room to talk a few days ago. Although Senju Kagawa was also very curious at the time, he was locked outside the door and could not hear what they were talking about. After they came out, they all looked unhappy, even as black as an overturned ink jar. So Senju Kagamikawa made a horrifying discovery. Ah, this. Could it be that Hashirama Senju and Madara were discovered while secretly meeting? It was even discovered by Thousand-Handed Buddha. In fact, if you think about it carefully, there are clues to follow. Senju Tobirama has a strong perception ability, and he may have discovered something fishy before, but recently something is wrong with Senju Hashirama too obviously, to the point that even Senju Kagawa can't ignore it. It's understandable that Senju Tobirama wants to explore. Oh no, it's bad luck. If Madara is really a member of the Uchiha clan, then Senju Butsuma will definitely not approve of their relationship and will definitely break them up. As for why Senju Kagamikawa was so sure that Senju Butsuma already knew about this, it must be because Senju Tobirama had long shown his disgust for the Uchiha clan, especially after Senju Itama died in battle. Senju Tobirama's disgust for the Uchiha clan became deeper and deeper. Oh no, what should I do? Based on Senju Butsuma's personality, he will definitely find a way to kill Madara. There is a high possibility that they will stage a drama of the mantis stalking the cicada while the Oriole is waiting behind when Hashirama and Madara meet. The more Senju Kagamikawa thought about it, the more worried he became. He was a little afraid that, given Senju Hashirama's personality, he might help Madara beat his own father and brother. Don't do this. However, it may be too late now, because after Senju Hashirama hurried out this morning, Senju Tobirama quickly found an excuse to follow him, and may have brought Senju Fusuma with him. Senju Jingchuan rushed over at almost the fastest speed in his life. He was thankful that at times like this, his breathing method could give him a great advantage. He was very fast, especially after learning the ninja step. He was even faster, and he didn't feel tired. He rushed to Nanhi River and hid in the bushes, observing secretly. Caught up, caught up. As expected, Senju Kagawa's excellent eyesight allowed him to quickly spot Senju Butsuma and Senju Tobirama, who were hiding in the back and eyeing him eagerly. On both sides of the Minamiga River are the familiar Senju Hashirama and Madara of the Senju Kagami River. It seems that his guess was correct. Senju Jingchuan slowed down his breathing, hoping to hide his presence. However, he failed. Senju Tobirama was an excellent perceptual ninja. He discovered Senju Kagawa's presence when he approached. His eyes were like knives, shooting towards Senju Kagawa's hiding place. I've been discovered by Tobirama-san. Senju Kagami walked out awkwardly, then crouched down beside Senju Tobirama-san. Then, Senju Kagawa saw. The face of Madara opposite him was very serious. He couldn't see the expression of Hashirama Senju, but he guessed that his expression would not be good after all. He was forced by his father and brother to capture his best friend. After a long silence between Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara, Madara spoke first. He said to Senju Hashirama with a cold expression. Let's get started right away. Let's say hello by skipping stones on the water. So the two of them almost simultaneously threw the stones in their hands towards the other side. After the two successfully exchanged the stones in their hands, they seemed to sense something and looked down at the stones in tacit understanding. Then at the same time, his expression suddenly changed. Madara looked a little nervous, and he said hurriedly. Hashirama, I'm sorry, I can't play with you today. I suddenly remembered that I have something to do. Then he turned around and pretended to leave. A trace of cold sweat also appeared on Senju Hashirama's forehead. He replied very reluctantly. Is that so? Then I'll go back today. It seems that the two of them have already agreed on the secret code. Senju Kagawa heaved a sigh of relief, but would Senju Fugen let Madara off so easily? After all, judging from Senju Fugen's appearance, he must have already determined that Madara is Uchiha. Sure enough, the next second, Senju Jingchuan saw that Senju Buddha's expression became serious and terrifying. He gritted his teeth and said. So fast, are you trying to escape? This guy, Hashirama, actually leaked the secret. It seems that Senju Hashirama will have a hard time when he returns home. Let's go, Tobirama. Senju Fusuma turned his head and signaled Tobirama beside him to follow, obviously not intending to take Senju Kagawa with him. Then, the two of them jumped out from their hiding place and stepped onto the water one after the other. On the other side, two figures, one tall and one short, also rushed out, obviously well prepared. Izuna. Senju Kagami looked at the black-haired, black-eyed, and fair-skinned Uchiha boy opposite him in disbelief. He didn't expect that Izuna was actually Madara's younger brother. At this time, the two sides were completely opposed to each other, and the atmosphere was tense. So you ninjas are so good at playing. I'm out of my league. You guys are so well matched. The corners of Senju Jingchuan's mouth twitched, and he couldn't help but complain in his heart. Chapter 46. Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara stopped running at the same time, turned their heads, looking nervous and stunned. It seems that we have the same idea, Senju Butsuma. Madara and Izuna's father, the head of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Tajima, spoke first. He looked serious, with a deep hatred and disgust for the Senju. Of course, Uchiha Izuna next to Uchiha Tajima also looked at Senju Butsuma and Senju Tobirama with a serious and hateful expression, and added. And Tobirama? What's going on? Uchiha Izuna seems to hate Senju Tobirama and sees him as an enemy. Senju Jingchuan was a little confused, but he soon figured it out. The Senju and Uchiha have had a long-standing grudge, so it seems possible that the two have seen or heard each other's names on the battlefield. So does Izuna know that Kagami River is actually Senju Kagami River? Senju Jingchuan couldn't help but think. Yes, Uchiha Tajima. Senju Butsuma responded, his tone full of hatred. And Izuna? Senju Tobirama also mentioned Uchiha Izuna's name. It seemed that both of them regarded each other as an enemy that matched their abilities. But it makes sense. The two of them are of similar age and are both very powerful ninjas. They were born in two hostile ninja clans, so they would naturally regard each other as enemies with equal abilities. Uchiha Tajima opened his 3 Megatama Sharingan without saying a word. This was the first time Senju Kagamikawa saw the Sharingan. The last time he was pulled into an illusion by the Sharingan, he actually didn't see the Sharingan clearly. I have to say, these eyes are worthy of being the bloodline limit unique to the Uchiha clan, they are really magnificent. However, Qian Shaojing Chuan didn't know whether he should go out now. The atmosphere was too tense. The two parties finally took action, almost at the same time. Sen Shaojing Chuan couldn't help but worry for both sides. 2 against 2, the strength of Senju Butsuma and Uchiha Tajima is similar. Both sides understand this after several confrontations. Even Senju Kagawa is clear about this. If Senju Butsuma and Uchiha Tajima want to break through the opponent's defense, it can only make the opponent panic. After realizing this, Senju Jingchuan's pupils suddenly shrank. He thought that he might know what Senju Fujian would do. 2 sharp weapons suddenly shot towards Senju Tobirama and Uchiha Izuna. This was done by Uchiha Tajima and Senju Butsuma at the same time. It was just a matter of which child would be killed first. When Senju Jingchuan saw this scene, he screamed and couldn't help but jump out, trying to stop the 2 sharp weapons. The next second, the 2 sharp weapons shot at Senju Tobirama and Uchiha Izuna were knocked down by 2 stones respectively. It was Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara's faces were pale and terrified. They were almost, just almost, about to lose another younger brother. The kunao, sword, and stone sank into the river together. Senju Jingchuan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, but he soon couldn't laugh anymore. Not to mention that the scream just now had already exposed his whereabouts, and he had no way to escape. He was now completely exposed under the eyes of both parties. Kagikawa? Why are you here too? Senju Hashirama was shocked when he found Kagikawa. He clearly didn't tell Kagikawa about this. Uchiha Izuna on the opposite side was also shocked, with a look of disbelief on her face. It was obvious that she didn't expect that he was a Senju. Perhaps his father didn't tell him that there was actually another child named Jingchuan in the thousand-handed Buddha's house? Thousand-handed Jingchuan thought with a smile on his face. Uchiha Tajima obviously had the best expression management. He was just stunned for a moment, then asked. Thousand-handed Buddha, do you have a 5th son? Well, it seems that this completely confirms Senju Kagawa's conjecture. The Uchiha clan had no idea that Senju Butsuken had a young son named Kagikawa. Maybe it was because Senju Kagamigawa was once considered a monster? This kind of thing should certainly be a scandal. Senju Jingchuan didn't expect that he could still think freely in such a tense and serious occasion. However, Izuna on the other side doesn't look very good. Senju Kagamikawa stared at Izuna carefully for a while. I feel like Izuna's eyes have turned a little red. Is she angry? Chapter 47. Conditions for producing the Sharingan. The weather today is still sunny, but the atmosphere in this small place of Nanhequan is very cold. Looking at the two sides confronting each other with swords drawn, there is coldness in the eyes of both sides, and people can't help but feel that the air is also a little chilly. Or rather, it was actually murderous intent. Although the atmosphere was somewhat eased by the sudden joining of Senju Kagawa, nothing had changed. Even Uchiha Izuna on the opposite side kept staring at Senju Kagawa. The whites of his eyes had turned slightly red, and he looked very angry, and Senju Kagawa had no way to avoid it. To put it in an exaggerated way, Senju Kagamikawa almost thought that Izuna wanted to eat him. Uchiha Tajima did not dwell too long on the topic of Senju Buddha has an unknown 5th son because he did not think Senju Kagamikawa was an important person. However, according to the current situation, the Uchiha side is actually at a disadvantage. Although we don't know how strong Senju Kagamikawa is, he is also a ninja after all. It's 4 against 3, so the Senju side still has the advantage. What's more, Uchiha Tajima could feel that Uchiha Izuna beside him was very unstable mentally and a ninja must remain calm at all times, otherwise he might fall into a disadvantage. Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama each stood in front of their younger brothers. Uchiha Madara still had a hint of fear on his face, and he said in a stiff and serious tone. I will never forgive anyone who tries to hurt my brother. Senju Hashirama said, not wanting to be outdone, me too. His expression was unusually serious. After all, just now his second brother, Tobirama Senju, almost died in front of him. Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara were on the verge of a fight, but Senju Tobirama looked at his elder brother Senju Hashirama in astonishment, and a warm feeling surged in his heart. Hashirama. Uchiha Madara suddenly spoke. Senju Hashirama responded, what? That silly and beautiful future we talked about, in the end, it may really be impossible to reach. The wind suddenly blew up, carrying away the leaves on the ground, disturbing the water of Nenhi River and the hearts of several little boys who longed for peace. Madara, you. Senju Hashirama looked incredulous. Although the time was short, I was really happy, Hashirama. Uchiha Madara closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, determination was revealed in his eyes. What the hell? Is Uchiha Madara going to break up with Senju Hashirama? Is he abandoning the common ideals of the three of them? I don't know what Hashirama Senju is feeling, but Senju Kagamikawa is in a very unhappy mood right now, although he knows that this may just be a stopgap measure for Madara in this situation. But at this moment, the mentality of a 5-year-old child had overwhelmed the adult rationality of Senju Kagawa. He interrupted Uchiha Madara and shouted. How is it possible, that kind of future? How can we not reach it? Brother Ban, I don't believe you will just give up like this. As soon as Senju Jingchuan finished speaking, everyone present looked at him. There was a thoughtful look in Uchiha Tajima's eyes, there was an inquiring look in Senju Butsuma's eyes, and there was an incredulous look in Senju Tobirama's eyes. He obviously didn't expect that his brother and younger brother were friends with Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara's expression was somewhat moved, while Senju Hashirama gave a thumbs up to Senju Kagawa in appreciation and smiled, revealing his big white teeth that sparkled in the sun. So bright. Master, you are so brave. The ugly monster secretly laughed at Qian Shao Jingchuan in the flames. Sen Shao Jingchuan felt embarrassed at this time. Those gazes seemed to be real, staring at him, penetrating him, and making him feel like a thorn in his back. Oh no! I'm going to be punished this time. Senju Kagamikawa began to regret his impulsiveness. Maybe it was the after effect of being a child for too long. Yes. Madara, I will not forget our common ideals. Senju Hashirama said to Madara with a smile. 3 against 4, Madara, can you do it? Uchiha Tajima ignored Senju Hashirama and asked Uchiha Madara directly. Uchiha Madara's eyelashes drooped, and he said in a serious tone. No, no. Kamigawa is very powerful. He is the child I told you about, the one I met in the land of lightning. Uchiha Tajima looked embarrassed when he heard what Uchiha Madara said. He didn't expect that everything he had planned would end up in failure. Let's go. Uchiha Madara said and turned to leave. Senju Hashirama was still unwilling to give up. He bit his lip and called out to Uchiha Madara. Madara, you haven't really given up, have you? You have the same idea as me and Kagamikawa. Uchiha Madara suddenly interrupted Senju Hashirama. You and Kagamikawa are both Senju's people. If possible, I really hope that we think differently. My brother was killed by the Senju clan, and your clansmen died at the hands of the Uchiha clan. Therefore, there is no need for you and I to be honest with each other. From now on, let's meet on the battlefield. Senju Kagamikawa closed his eyes, and the images of the deceased Idama and Watama seemed to reappear in front of his eyes. Perhaps, the hatred between the Senju and Uchiha clans was the death of a brother like this, and this alone was enough to make the two clans fight to the death. This is a difficult question. Senju Hashirama, I am Uchiha Madara. After saying this, Uchiha Madara suddenly turned his head, revealing a scarlet Sharingan, with an ominous Megatama flashing in that Sharingan. Senju Kagawa was shocked, while Uchiha Tajima and Uchiha Izuna were obviously delighted by Madara's sudden opening of the one Megatama Sharingan. Although he did not kill Senju Fusuma's son, Uchiha Madara opened his eyes and also learned the news about the Senju Kagami River. It is unknown whether this breaking up the couple is a blessing or a curse for the Senju clan. Senju Kagawa suddenly seemed to understand the conditions for opening the Sharingan. Just now, there was clearly great pain in Uchiha Madara's eyes, the pain of the conflict between ideals and reality, the pain of choosing between his brother and his friend. It turns out that the opening of the Sharingan means that great pain will come. Senju Jingchuan thought a little dazedly. The next second, Izuna, who was about to leave with Uchiha Tajima and Uchiha Madara, suddenly stopped. He turned around and shouted at Senju Kagawa's back. Kagekawa! No, Senju Kagekawa! You big liar! The next time we meet will be on the battlefield. Then we'll have a fair fight. Uchiha Izuna will definitely defeat you. The exposed eyes were no longer the beautiful black and white eyes before. The eye sockets had become Sharingan like Uchiha Madara's. Chapter 48, The Heartache. All the way from Nanhekwan back to the Senju clan's territory, Senju Jingchuan and his group remained very silent. On the way, Senju Kagamakuwa kept thinking about what Uchiha Izuna had just said, and he felt a little uncomfortable. He actually regarded Uchiha Izuna as a good friend, but he didn't expect Izuna to say it so decisively. The more he thought about it, the more uncomfortable Senju Kagamigawa felt. Maybe Izuna thought Senju Kagamigawa was deliberately approaching Uchiha Madara and him. Uchiha Izuna was also feeling bad at this time. After all, he was so angry that his eyes opened. During the time he spent with Senju Kagamakuwa could tolerate his temper, help him heal his wounds, accompany him to relieve his boredom, and even taught him how to catch and grill fish. Although the arrogant Izuna never admitted it, he actually regarded Senju Kagamakuwa as a friend in his heart. However, he really couldn't accept Kagamakuwa's identity as Senju. His brother's death left him with no way around this hurdle. That's why Uchiha Izuna felt that Senju Kagamakuwa was deceiving him. Under the influence of strong emotions of sadness and anger, the chakra suddenly hit the optic nerve of the brain commonly known as being emotionally overwhelmed, which prompted him to open his eyes. Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara also remained silent along the way. The breakup with their best friend just now also made them feel lost. Both of them began to think, is it really impossible to have both family and peace? As for Thousand-Handed Buddha, his mood was certainly not very good either. He was secretly thinking that the Senju clan had lost both the wife and the army. Today his two sons were bewitched by Uchiha Tajima's son, and today not only did they fail to keep Uchiha Tajima's son, but they also gave him 2 Sharingan. This time, the Uchiha clan's combat power would increase again. Senju Tobirama now had a very conflicted expression. He looked at Senju Hashirama on his left, and then at Senju Kagawa on his right. He had a lot of questions in his mind, but seeing the sad expressions on both of them, he was unable to ask them. Senju Tobirama felt miserable. His elder brother and younger brother were kidnapped by others in places he could not see, and Uchiha Izuna, who he had already identified as his future equal on the battlefield, had now become his younger brother's opponent. Senju Tobirama is feeling mixed emotions, worrying about his elder brother and younger brothers, and feeling extremely miserable. Who will comfort him in his misfortune? Although Uchiha Tajima was very upset when he first came here because his eldest son had a private affair with the eldest son of the opposite Senju family, he now feels very refreshed. Not only did everyone come here without any injuries, but his 2 sons now have their Sharingan opened. The cases of opening the Sharingan at the age of 12 and 9 are very outstanding in the entire Uchiha clan, not to mention that his sons have unlimited potential. Although he regretted not being able to kill Senju Fugen's son, and Senju Fugen had a little son that popped out from nowhere, but he was really feeling relaxed and happy now. To sum up, the biggest winner in this battle between the 2 sides is Uchiha Tajima, and the biggest loser is Senju Fusuma. It was almost noon when they returned to the clan, but Senju Jingchuan was still troubled by what had just happened, so he had no mood to cook. As soon as he got home, he went straight to his room and shut himself off. Senju Hashirama was also feeling upset and wanted to relieve his depression through exercise, so he went straight to the training ground. As soon as he stepped into the Senju clan's territory, some clan members came to look for Senju Fugen, so Senju Fugen went straight to handle official business and had no time to take care of his sons who were causing him trouble. He planned to deal with Senju Hashirama and Senju Kagawa at night. And the Senju Tobirama. The innocent Senju Tobirama cooked a meal for himself with tears in his eyes. He had no appetite for lunch and he couldn't find anyone to talk to, so he ate the disgusting meal alone, not as delicious as the one cooked by Senju Kagawa. He washed the dishes silently by himself and then went out for training. By the evening, after Senju Fugen returned home, Senju Jingchuan finally adjusted his mood. He tidied himself up, cooked a good meal, and sat at the table waiting for his 2 brothers and Senju Fugen to come back. When Qian Shao Fujian came back, he saw this scene. The dim and warm light shone on Senju Kagawa's fair little face. Because it was a kerosene lamp, the light flickered and Senju Kagawa's face was a little blurry. He just sat there like that, his white hair that had grown past his shoulders draped behind him, with a mischievous wisp of bangs covering his eyes, which in turn highlighted the delicacy of the lower half of his face. Senju Fujian couldn't help but stop, a little afraid to move forward. In a trance, he seemed to see his deceased wife, Senju Haruko. This scene was very similar to the countless nights when Haruko Senju prepared dinner and waited for him to come home. Both Kagamigawa Senju and Tobirama Senju look more like Haruko Senju, especially Tobirama Senju's white hair and red eyes, which are exactly like his mother. But Tobirama Senju's facial features are more like the coldness of Busuma Senju, while Kagamigawa Senju looks softer and more delicate, perhaps because he is younger. In short, Senju Butsukin now mistakes Senju Kagawa for Senju Haruko and thinks he is dreaming. At this time, Qian Shao Jingchuan, who had cooked the meal obediently and sat quietly at the table, did not dare to move his hands when he saw Qian Shao Fujian coming back. He just wanted to reduce Qian Shao Fujian's anger a little bit, but suddenly saw Qian Shao Fujian standing still at the door, and slowly formed a round question mark on his forehead. Due to the lighting and viewing angle issues, Senju Jingchuan couldn't see Senju Fujian's expression at all, so he had no idea that Senju Fujian had a dazed look on his face, sometimes happy and sometimes sad, looking like a drug-addicted person. Therefore, Qian Shao Jingchuan thought that Qian Shao Fujian was still angry, so he dared not make any noise. He pretended to be a good boy, fearing that Qian Shao Fujian would punish him. So, at this moment, the atmosphere between the two was extremely awkward. One was tapping his toes on the ground in embarrassment, and the other was trapped in beautiful memories and couldn't get out. "Father, why are you standing at the door and not going in? I have already prepared dinner." Senju Tobirama just came back and saw this embarrassing and strange scene. He couldn't help but ask Senju Bujian. Senju Fujian finally broke free from his memories. He blinked and realized that the person he thought was his wife was actually his youngest son Jingchuan. He coughed twice awkwardly to cover up, and while walking in, he turned his head and glared at Senju Tobirama. Senju Tobirama, who was inexplicably glared at by Senju Butsuma, had no idea what mistake he had made. He looked extremely innocent. Chapter 49. War and Peace. The Senju Kagawa family sat together for dinner again, but the atmosphere of this meal was extremely awkward. Qian Shao Fujian has always been the kind of person who would never talk about anything at the dinner table, so no matter how he feels, he won't lose his temper now. Therefore, Qian Shao Jingchuan had a meal that he could not taste and was uncomfortable. Qian Shao Fujian's expression was always cold, so Qian Shao Jingchuan could not read anything from his consistent expression. What Senju Jingchuan didn't know was that Senju Fujian was also very embarrassed at this time, to the point where he might be able to dig out a sea view room from the ground with his toes. Senju Jingchuan could only comfort himself that maybe nothing was wrong. However, Senju Hashirama seemed to be unaffected by anything and continued to eat very actively. He would give a thumbs up from time to time and praise Senju Kagawa for his increasingly delicious cooking. Senju Tobirama also finished his painful dinner in silence. For him, this dinner might not be as comfortable as the one he had at noon. Finally finishing the meal, Senju Fujian put down his chopsticks, his face serious, as if he was about to start scolding Senju Jingchuan and the others. Qian Shao Jingchuan immediately sat down obediently, ready to accept the punishment from Qian Shao Fujian. "Kamigawa, from what the Uchiha boy said today, you know both of them." Although Senju Fusuma asked a question, his tone was very certain. It was obvious that he already knew the answer and was just asking as a routine question. Yet, seeing this, Senju Jingchuan didn't have any intention of denying it and agreed readily. However, he didn't expect that the first person Senju Butsuma questioned was not Senju Hashirama but him. After saying this, Thousand-Handed Buddha fell silent, as if he didn't know what to say. After a while, he said in a dry tone, "Don't associate with the Uchiha brats anymore. I'm afraid you'll be deceived by them." A big question mark popped up in Senju Kagawa's head. Is this serious? And you, Hashirama? If you continue to associate with Uchiha Madara, I will consider breaking your legs. Senju Butsuma glared at Senju Hashirama and added, "If you place your trust in the Uchiha, they will steal information when you let your guard down and take your guard down. Look, Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Izuna first deceived your trust, and then used you to successfully open the Sharingan. The Uchiha clan are all evil and malicious people. Don't trust them. Today, you heard those two Uchiha say they wanted to break up with you. They were just deceiving the two of you. Senju Butsuma said this with a solemn oath, as if trying to scare Senju Kagawa with these words and make him give up the idea of continuing to associate with the Uchiha clan. The corners of Qian Shaojing Chuan's mouth twitched. He was speechless and couldn't help thinking. Father Fujian, you can just use this to trick brother Hashirama, but this level of scare me. No, Madara is not that kind of person. He was clearly in pain today. Senju Hashirama actually took Senju Butsuma's words seriously and even retorted stubbornly. However, Senju Butsuma was completely enraged by Senju Hashirama. With deep anger in his eyes, he said with a look of dismay. How do you know? It was his tribesman who killed your brother and seriously injured Jing Chuan. Do you believe him? So many tribesmen have proven the lesson with blood, and you believe him. No one knows what that young man's intentions are. If you are deceived, you will put the Senju clan in danger. Senju Hashirama's tone was serious and unquestionable. Senju Hashirama looked at his angry eyes as if they were burned, lowered his eyelids, and replied in a compromising manner. Yes, father. Senju Jingchuan watched the scene in front of him, and he knew that all this was the fault of this era. The friendship between young people should not be questioned. However, in this wrong era, the friendship between two like-minded young people was eventually buried by the bloody storm of the family. There was nothing wrong with Senju Butsuma and Uchiha Tajima, they were just fulfilling their obligations as the heads of a clan and maintaining the utmost malicious assumptions about everything about their opponents, including those who might be their enemies. This was their protection for their own clan members and also for their children who were not well versed in the world. However, Senju Jingchuan could not accept such an era, nor could he accept such a reason. If we want to change this era, building a village is not enough. Perhaps, as he had said jokingly before, perhaps, only by establishing a ninja country, a country that is strong enough for ninjas, strong enough to compete with the daimyo and nobles, can we change this hateful world and these twisted systems. However, people's cognition cannot be changed overnight. Perhaps, only after the establishment of the ninja country can the cognition of civilians and ninjas be slowly changed. Senju Jingchuan felt that he could not just sit there and wait for death, and perhaps he should start making some preparations. However, before Senju Jingchuan could make any preparations, the war began again. This war came suddenly and was caused by the inexplicable conflict between the Senju and Yugure clans. That's right, it was inexplicable. The Yugure clan suddenly attacked the Senju clan because of a mission. The conflict between a few people evolved into a local conflict, and finally became a war between the Senju and Uchiha clans. The Uchiha clan, which often opposed the Senju clan, saw this opportunity to intervene and joined the war. From then on, the war became a war between the Senju and the Uchiha and Hago Romo. In this situation, the Senju clan is actually at a disadvantage. After all, the enemy on the opposite side is two ninja clans. Moreover, although the Yugure clan is not as good as the Senju and Uchiha clans, they have more people. After all, as the saying goes, 3 cobblers are better than Zhuzhi Yang. There is strength in numbers. This is Senju Jingchuan's second time going to the battlefield. Compared to the first time he went to the battlefield, Senju Jingchuan now has a lot of experience. For example, he can now kill enemies without blinking, thanks to Senju Kagawa's strong psychological construction ability. Before going to the battlefield this time, Senju Jingchuan prepared himself for a long time. He gave himself a psychological hint: if he didn't kill them, the enemy would come back to kill him. This has almost become a psychological hint. This kind of psychological suggestion did play a big role on the battlefield. At least Senju Jingchuan was no longer timid. However, this time, Senju Kagawa still did not fight on the front line. He positioned himself as a medical ninja, and he thought that if possible, he still did not want to be an executioner who took other people's lives. If he could choose, Senju Kagamawa would like to be the one who saves other people's lives. Although, it is possible that the Senju people he saved might also become the sharp blade that kills other people. Chapter 50. Although Senju Jingchuan didn't want to go to the battlefield, he had no choice but to go to the battlefield. However, Senju Kagawa has made preparations and plans to stay put until the end of the war. Before this war, Hashirama Senju and Tobirama Senju were extremely worried about Kagakigawa Senju. They even wanted to take Kagakigawa Senju with them, but since the two of them had to fight on the front lines and the danger level might be higher, Kagakigawa Senju's two brothers decided to let Kagakigawa Senju stay in the rear and treat the injured Senju people. But before going to the battlefield, Senju Tobirama couldn't hold back his worries, and he told Senju Kagawa a lot of things to pay attention to on the battlefield. He had told Senju Kagawa these when Senju Kagawa first went to the battlefield, but he was still worried, after all. Senju Kagawa was now his only younger brother. In addition, Hashirama Senju used most of his savings to purchase many detonating tags for Senju Kagawa and stuffed them into his ninja scroll, instructing him to throw out all the detonating tags when he encountered an enemy he could not deal with, and to put his own life first. Even the usually serious Senju Fugen took time out to instruct and care about Senju Jingchuan before he officially went to the battlefield, even though Senju Fugen was very busy during the period of pre-war preparations. Even many members of the Senju clan who were on good terms with Senju Jingchuan came to show their concern for him, wishing him to be safe on the battlefield and that the Senju clan could win the war. All of these are different. Senju Jingchuan was so moved by them that he almost cried. He was very grateful to have met these family members and clansmen who cared about him in this life. In short, no matter how reluctant or unwilling one was, the war had already begun. As 3 tall flags with different ninja clan emblems were erected, this long-awaited war finally broke out. Senju Kagamakuwa positioned himself as a logistics and medical staff this time, and there were also several young Senju ninjas of similar age to help him. No matter how inhumane the ninja clan was, they would not be so cruel as to let 5 or 6-year-old children fight on the front line. Many of these little rascals are going to the battlefield for the first time. The purpose of going to the battlefield is to let the older, experienced, and sophisticated thousand-hand ninjas guide them, and secondly to cultivate their awe of the battlefield and not treat it as a joke. This time, Senju Kagamakuwa was responsible for leading this group of young ninjas to adapt to the battlefield. Most of the young ninjas were familiar with Senju Kagawa. They had been brought over by Senju Kagawa to farm the land. Senju Kagawa often made some delicious snacks for the young ninjas as a reward. Therefore, they were quite familiar with Senju Kagawa. Moreover, Senju Kagawa was a very dignified old man among the children of the Senju clan. Therefore, it is most appropriate for Senju Kagawa to lead them this time. The few little kids felt very novel when they first went to the battlefield. Although they had all taken on the simplest mercenary tasks and most of them had killed people with knives, it was their first time on the battlefield after all. Even though the adults had told them about the cruelty of the battlefield, they still had no specific concept of it and still held on to a primitive curiosity, just like Senju Kagawa when he went to the battlefield for the first time. To some extent, perhaps the rear of the battlefield is the most terrifying, bloodiest, and most suitable place for the little ninjas in the greenhouse to grow up. Compared to the fast-paced, high-intensity combat missions on the front lines, the pace here is relatively slower, but it also allows the little ninjas to better understand the horror of war. Senju Kagamakuwa was also responsible for escorting a group of wounded soldiers who had luckily survived the battlefield back to the base camp in the rear. Among these wounded, some were missing arms and legs, some were slashed in the waist, and some were almost killed by slitting their throats. If Senju Kagamakuwa had not arrived in time and brought a few thousand hands ninjas to deal with the enemy ninjas who besieged them, they might have died long ago. In short, these wounded were covered in blood and flesh, which was not suitable for children to watch. Senju Jingchuan couldn't help but turn pale when he saw these injuries. That's right, he was frightened. But after seeing such injuries for a long time, Senju Jingchuan became somewhat numb. He even thought to himself that if it were the country where he lived in his previous life, these contents would not be approved even if they were made into a war documentary. Even if they were approved by luck, they would definitely be blocked out. In the tent where the wounded were, the smell of blood and sweat mixed together, stinking and dispersing in the hot midsummer air, almost making people see stars. The floor, bed, and stretcher here were all stained with more or less smelly, even black blood stains. Some of the bloodstains had already turned black and clumped together, which was really not suitable for children to watch. You vomit. As soon as the little ninjas stepped into the tent, they couldn't help feeling nauseous and vomiting. Some of them even fell down and lay on the ground vomiting. Senju Kagawa had just finished using his healing technique on a few wounded soldiers, and when he turned around he saw this scene, and immediately called them out. If you guys can't adapt now, go out and take a break. There will be many more such scenes in the future. Are you scared now? When the little ninjas looked up, they saw the purgatory-like scene in front of them. They were shocked and it took them a long time to digest what Senju Kagawa had just said. Several little ninjas refused to admit defeat and shouted. Who's afraid? We're not afraid. However, when they saw Senju Jingchuan and the bloody wounded in front of Senju Jingchuan, they were still a little timid and hesitated to step forward. Senju Jingchuan couldn't help but find it a little funny when he saw how they were stubborn but afraid. What can we do about it? These little radish heads are still children. However, Senju Jingchuan's current appearance is indeed a bit scary. He was originally wearing green clothes, but the green clothes were stained with large patches of blood, and the color had become very dark, looking like a very dark blood color. The ends of his soft white hair that was originally draped over his shoulders were also stuck together because of the red blood stains, and his fair skin was also stained with some blood. The contrast between the bright red blood and the fair skin was more prominent. Moreover, Senju Jingchuan's face turned slightly pale due to the bad smell of the indoor air, and his hands were covered in blood, making him look more like a ghost coming for revenge. No wonder the kids hesitated and didn't dare approach him.